Hey, folks, did you know that Just Coffee has a tagline of justice from the grounds up? And that means that they ensure that all creatures from being to being is treated with respect. The earth is being taken care of by the farmer. The farmer is paid fairly by Just Coffee, and the beans are roasted to order, not sitting around for months on shelves. And they have a feature called a coffee tracker. And on the bottom of every bag is a 5-digit number. Hop on their website, plug in that number, and you can see exactly who grew your coffee and how much they were paid for it. It's like going to the farmer's market and knowing the farmer you're buying from. That level of transparency is going above and beyond what retailers are required to do. And those types of clean and transparent actions are just one of the things that I love about Just Coffee. Check them out now, justcoffee.coop. You can buy the Majority Report blend or check out all their other great blends. And the code is MR25, 25% off of all coffee to celebrate their birthday. The code MR25, 25% off of all coffee. Also, one of our sponsors today, telling us there are 365 days in a year, which means there are 365 days when you might need to buy someone a birthday present. Finding the perfect gift for everyone, virtually impossible. But I say virtually because you can simplify the process with an Aura digital picture frame. Ranked the #1 digital picture frame by Wirecutter, Aura frames are easy to set up, they're easy to update, they're easy to enjoy. Plus, Aura frames are preloaded with photos and gift messages, which you preload. So whether you're giving the frame to your best friend, your dad, or your Aunt Susan, you can be sure your gift is personalized just for them. Aura frames are super easy. It's a great gift for people who are a little bit technically challenged. You can literally put your pictures on there before taking it out of the box. You can set up their entire experience. It's great. Great way to keep in touch. Show your parents pictures of your kids. Show your friends what you're up to. Every Aura frame comes with unlimited storage, so you can preload the frame with as many photos as you want. All you need is a free Aura app and a Wi-Fi connection. Right now, Aura is having their very first friends and family sale, and we got an exclusive offer just for our listeners. For limited time only, you can get $35 off their best-selling frame by visiting auraframes.com using the promo code MAJORITY. That's auraframes.com, A-U-R-A, frames.com, promo code MAJORITY. This is the best offer of the season, so don't miss out. Terms and conditions apply. Now, time for the show.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, August 21st, 2024. My name is Emma Vigeland, in for Sam Seder, and this is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, David Dayen, executive editor at the American Prospect, joined Sam in a conversation they had on Sunday before the DNC about some of Harris's economic proposals. Also on the program today, night 2 of the DNC saw speeches from Bernie Sanders, First Gentleman Doug Emhoff, and Michelle and Barack Obama, and more. But outside, anti-genocide protests escalated, multiple demonstrators hospitalized, and dozens more arrested. Harrison Walls trolled the Trump campaign by filling 2 arenas at once, holding a packed rally in Milwaukee where the RNC was held, as the DNC packs the Chicago center, wherever the hell they're having it. This is huge news. Montana becomes the 8th state where abortion will be on the ballot. Key for John Tester's race and Democrats maintaining a Senate majority. All that, economic stuff, housing, this hinges on Harris, if she wins, having the Senate. Polling shows North Carolina is now a toss-up, giving Harris multiple paths to victory. Shocker, the fake ceasefire deal is collapsing. Israeli media reports that the bodies of 6 hostages recovered in Gaza yesterday were likely killed by the IDF. Hamas said this months ago. And by the way, U.S. media is just not reporting this. Israel strikes another school in Gaza, killing at least 12 people yesterday. No doubt they're doing this as the DNC distracts the public. DeSantis' loony school board candidates got trounced in Florida yesterday. But in worse news, the pro-crypto Democrat defeated the Elizabeth Warren-backed opponent in Arizona's 3rd in a primary by 40 votes. And lastly, a Trump judge deems the FTC's non-compete ban unconstitutional. It's got to be appealed, but just an example of what the judiciary can do when Republicans get elected. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome to the show, everybody. It is Hump Day, but I am just here.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm a solo Hump Day.
So I get all the royalties for the Hump Day trademark. That's, cha-ching.
It's vertical integration, I think. I don't know. I'm not an economist.
Me neither. Don't ask me to do math. But Sam is out on vacation for the rest of this week and all of next week. But
except for the next 2 nights.
For the next 2 nights, he'll be joining us remotely to break down nights 3 and 4 of the DNC. So stay tuned for that. I think we'll probably go live around 8 p.m. Eastern, although we could push that back because it's 7 p.m. Central where Chicago's doing it, and I was falling asleep last night because I'm trying to watch the whole thing, but it goes late.
I will say on Monday night when I was getting ready for bed and then realizing Biden was still talking, I'm like, oh, thank God we weren't covering this.
Oh my gosh, I know, but tonight it's probably going to go long. But stay with us and watch. It'll be really fun. We'll have
be
some
having
drinks.
fun in studio.
Yeah, exactly. Little drinky, maybe a little smoky. Yeah, we'll see. I take that from I'm an avid listener of Chris Sims's podcast. That's what he describes it as. So little NFL podcast plug. Anyway, so last night, both Michelle and Barack Obama spoke at the DNC. Bernie Sanders also spoke. First Gentleman Doug Emhoff spoke about how he met Kamala Harris and a lot of those personal things. But the headliners were Michelle and Barack Obama. And Michelle Obama gave a really personal speech, a lot of praise for her. We will play some of that later in the show. But Obama followed her, and we know this, one of the most gifted orators that we've seen in politics. And what I'm really liking about this moment for the Democrats is that we're past the point of moralizing about the Republicans. And this stoic patriotism that Biden and frankly Hillary Clinton seemed to think was effective, of making this voting for Democrats this solemn duty to democracy, and then talking about the threat that Republicans pose in a way that I think makes people turned off to the idea of engaging in politics. The Harris-Walz campaign has decided to lean into the fun of it and lean into actually doing partisanship, running against the Republicans, mocking them. And we'll get to how the Harris campaign did that more specifically, but it seems like Obama kind of got the message. This is going to drive Trump crazy. For just the podcast audience, Obama makes a gesture with his hands here. I'll explain what that means after
It attacks
we play
my
it.
manhood unfairly, I might add.
Gather here tonight, the people who will decide this election are asking a very simple question. Who will fight for me? Who's thinking about my future about my children's future, about our future together. One thing is for certain, Donald Trump is not losing sleep over that question. Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems since he rode down his golden escalator 9 years ago. It has been a constant stream of gripes and grievances that's actually been getting worse now that he's afraid of losing to Kamala. There's the childish nicknames, the crazy conspiracy theories, this weird obsession with crowd sizes.
There's that gesture. Yeah! His dick is small!
Can we say JD fucks couches? Yes, we can. Can we say Donald Trump has a small dick?
Yes, we can. I love that. Look, I mean, these are little things that I just think are fun because they realize how easy it is to trigger Trump. I mean, what I've loved about what Harris has done as well is she's not making her gender or her race the central focus of her campaign. That's also what struck me when Hillary Clinton spoke, where she's mentioning herself in the same breath as Shirley Chisholm, and like, I'm a continuation of the legacy. Shirley Chisholm ran for president in 1972 as the first black woman to run for president in this incredibly trailblazing manner. Hillary Clinton.
She's Arkansas Shirley Chisholm.
You were the first lady, then a senator. Like I find her, her very self-serving placement of herself in history in that manner, with much more radical and risk-taking figures, to be quite narcissistic. But putting that aside for a second, it also, her tactic played into Trump's hands, where Harris is allowing them to flail about and gnash their teeth about her race and her gender, while she focuses on policies and trying to move the country forward in a way that I just think appeals to people more. And then they're
hysterical sky is falling Chicken Little act that they were running because Biden couldn't get off his ass in campaign.
Exactly. It was a Debbie Downer, and Obama is buying into that, trolling Trump, and yeah, like, this will bother him. I'm old enough to remember when he bragged about his penis size during the
First
Republican
of all, there's
debates.
not even reporting that says it's small. Any reporting available says that it's fine size. It just looks like a toadstool. Okay. Ask Stormy.
The width is just as important as the length. Okay. I'm sorry.
We're in the first half. So
I forgot. Stop calling me chode. All right. Okay, we're in the first half. Anyway, bonk. Tim Walz and the Harris campaign, in the midst of all of this, went to Milwaukee. This was a really smart move. The Republicans held their convention in Milwaukee. They basically packed this entire arena also to trigger Trump and make him lash out. This is an effective strategy, too, because he will lash out about this. On one hand, you have Obama doing that. And then here's Tim Walz speaking before Harris in Milwaukee, again, where the RNC was held last month. So they're packing two arenas at once, the convention in Chicago, then this rally in Milwaukee. And again, another improvement on past campaigns, actually campaigning in Wisconsin. This is, I think, the third time that the campaign has already done events there since the campaign launched last month. So they're doing the work as well of campaigning, appreciative of that from a strategic perspective. Here's Walz talking about Donald Trump.
You know, it was only a month ago that the Republican Party gathered for their convention right here on this very spot. It doesn't sound like any of you watched it, but in case you didn't, after promising us a speech that was going to be about unity and promising that he was a changed man. Donald Trump subjected us to 92 minutes of ranting and raving insanity. Now look, they left here riding high. They were feeling good. This thing was over. Well, trust me, Milwaukee, a hell of a lot can change in 4 weeks. You run a campaign based on fear like them, you're going to run into a little trouble when you run into a campaign that's based on joy. These guys are focused on the past, like the 1850s past. This campaign's focused on your future.
Forward looking. Yeah, and this is I'm repeating myself, but you know, the thing about Republicans is that pointing out that they're cruel, they're like, yeah, duh.
Yeah, that's why people like us.
That's the whole point.
We're organized cruelty, yeah.
Right. It's the same thing with pointing out that Trump's a liar. The Republican voters are like, yeah.
It works. Okay, you should try it sometime.
They're like they think all politicians lie because there's such cynicism.
Well, and it's true.
And it's true. But even in just like the notions of democratic change, they don't believe in those things because that would mean believing in something more than self-interest. So they internalize self-interest and callousness and cruelty as virtue. And so when Hillary Clinton and even Biden, who I think, won mostly on the fact that it was the pandemic and Trump was so historically unpopular, when they point that out or focus the campaign on moralizing about that, the Republican base goes, yeah, we want to own that. That's a part of what we want to do. We want to inflict cruelty on groups that are not a part of the existing power structure here. So you play exactly into their hands. And when you act shocked about it, they are emboldened. So this is about drawing a contrast and marginalizing them. Marginalizing the bullies, punching back against the bullies. That's how you make them into a joke. That's how you win.
You have to diminish them.
Exactly.
Like, they benefit from you maximizing them and puffing them up. Whereas if you can call them, say, weird, and because for 50 years it's been this, well, this represents a silent majority thing. What that really means is that our electorate is stacked towards a certain type of person, even a little bit maybe reactionary and propertied. And if they can turn out, exactly, and if they can turn them out, then they can win elections. But that's a smaller and smaller group of people, and the people that genuinely subscribe to that, they are weird.
Right, and that's what obviously I think has been the best part tactically of how the Democrats have run this time. Make them look uncool. Make them look small. Now. We'll get to David Dayen and his conversation with Sam in just a second, but I also wanted to highlight the fact that Bernie Sanders did speak last night at the DNC, and he made this remark where initially I thought, oh, is he talking about himself and his 2 runs for president when he speaks about money in politics in primaries? And I don't think that's the case, actually. He was, I think, specifically referring here to AIPAC and the dark Republican money that was poured into races against Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush and was successful in defeating some of the most progressive members of Congress on behalf of Israel, but also on behalf of a wide swath of conservative interests that they were able to launder through AIPAC's outfit. I appreciated Bernie alluding to this last night. This was that part of his remarks.
Going to win this struggle because this is precisely what the American people want from their government. And my friends, at the very top of that to-do list is the need to get big money out of our political process. Billionaires in both parties should not be able to buy elections, including primary elections.
I think that is what he was referencing, not his primary, although it would apply in that instance as well.
Right.
This
is an urgent problem in how Israel aligned, whether it's the DMFI or AIPAC, are just buying elections and foreclosing and going after the squad. And it's not to say that like a larger part of it was just say how Bowman's district was redrawn, for instance. Like it's not exclusively like a left problem, but they are picking.
But it was
people
redrawn, by a very conservative party chair,
exactly,
who did not like AOC. Although now is Jay Jacobs, I think, is saying some more positive things about her. But
the spending, the spending is ridiculous. It makes it impossible to compete.
And this is a problem that I think needs to be revived, or a conversation that needs to be revived, as Matt says, because this is not a good development. Both Harris and Trump are the first. It's the first time in 20 years that these campaigns have not revealed their big money bundlers to the public. It's not legal. It's not a legal requirement for you to disclose bundlers in terms of like very wealthy people that bundle other donors together to fundraise for your campaign. It's insane that that's not required, but it's customary. And it's the first time in 20 years that neither of them have done so. I don't think that's an encouraging development. And I was appreciative of Bernie Sanders making that clear last night at the DNC with the time that he was allotted. So with that said, we have a word from some of our sponsors, and then we will take you to a conversation that Sam had with David Dayen right before the DNC started about what Harris's economic platform could look like. We'll be back with you in just a second.
Hey, folks, summer's finally here. I may even take a vacation. But that means more time spent outside. That means mowing the lawn for some of you. That means days at the beach, hopefully for me soon, having a drink on your deck, or walking around outside, going to smorgasbord. Make sure you're taking extra care of your hair this summer, since sun, salt, and SPF can affect your hair health. Now is the perfect time to start taking Nutrafol. Nutrafol, the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, with over 1 million people seeing thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements are physician formulated. They use 100% drug-free ingredients. Their patented technology provides consistent, reliable results without compromising your sex life. I mean, that's basically when I started to feel like I was getting a little bit of thinning, I decided to try Nutrafol, and I've had great results. I still take it, frankly. And one of the things that makes you feel a little bit more confident, many supplements rely solely on ingredient studies. In other words, they've got this and that, they got this and that, and they look at the separate studies on specific ingredients. Well, Nutrafol clinically tests its final formulations with all the ingredients together to ensure their efficacy. In a clinical study, 84% of men showed improvement in their hair after 6 months taking Nutrafol's men's hair growth supplements. You can take their hair wellness quiz over at Nutrafol.com/men for a personalized hair health plan based on your specific root causes. See what I did there? With Nutrafol, building hair growth routine is simple. Purchase online, no prescription or doctor visit is required. Free shipping, automated deliveries ensure you'll never miss a day. You'll see results in 3 to 6 months. Take the first step towards achieving your hair growth goals. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men. Enter the promo code TMR. Find out why over 4,500 healthcare professionals and stylists recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men, spelled Nutrafol.com/men. Promo code TMR. That's Nutrafol.com. Promo code TMR. Link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Also, another sponsor of the program today. You want your home to be a sanctuary? Well, it could be. Cozy Earth has helped me when I want to, get some rest. I sleep. I sleep on sheets that are temperature regulating. When I want to just chill, I got these joggers and the sweatshirt and a hoodie that, frankly, look good enough. I can wear it outside too, but they're just super comfortable. Makes me want to sit on the couch and tell my kids to be quiet. Thanks to Cozy Earth for sponsoring this episode. You can unlock an exclusive 40% discount using the code Majority Report at cozyearth.com/Majority Report. I got sheets from Cozy Earth. I got really soft towels from Cozy Earth. I've got soft but durable feeling, thin but warm, temperature regulating hoodie and joggers. It's amazing. You can feel the difference with Cozy Earth's best-selling bamboo sheet set made from 100% premium viscose. It's from bamboo. It makes them, Cozy Earth's sheets, incredibly breathable. They are uniquely soft. They only get softer with every wash. They're much more durable than other sheets, which I can tell you, when you get to my age, you start to realize, like, sheets wear out. Comes with a 100-night sleep trial. If you're not completely in love, return it for a full refund. Cozy Earth also has luxury bath sheets. They're super soft and plush towels, crafted with a unique blend of cotton and bamboo viscose, using innovative zero-twist technology. I don't know what that means, but they're super soft and they're super absorbent. Cozy Earth sheets are so breathable, you will sleep several degrees cooler, which is huge for me. And like I say, they're made from viscose, from bamboo. Bamboo is incredibly sustainable. It's a weed. So be careful when you grow bamboo in front of your house. People do it sometimes, and it just spreads like wildfire. Cozy Earth prides itself on being responsible for production of all its products. Cozy Earth bedding and bath products have a 10-year warranty, showing their commitment to quality. Upgrade your nights and transform your days with Cozy Earth. You can get 40% off at cozyearth.com/Majority Report using the code Majority Report. So that's cozyearth.com/Majority Report using the code Majority Report. Don't forget to tell them we sent you in the post-purchase survey, and you'll get some free socks. I actually have Cozy Earth socks too, and they are exceedingly comfortable. We'll put a link in the podcast and YouTube description for that too. Now back to Emma. We are back. Sam Seder, the Majority Report. Joining me now, David Dayen, the executive editor of The American Prospect. We are recording, David, just a day before you're headed to Chicago. This is on Sunday. You're headed to Chicago tomorrow for the Democratic convention.
I thought we were going to make this like it was the AI version of me, and like this is actually Tuesday, and I'm in two places at once.
There's a lot of people who think you're AI anyways, even before this became popular. So,
right.
Based upon how prolific you are. There's been years, actually, where I've wondered that. But all right, putting that aside, I wanted to talk to you about, there's two pieces that you've written that dovetail with the third, which is you wrote about the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, the sort of bizarrely named, but understandably named.
Hey, look, inflation went down after it passed. You can't deny branding.
Yeah, it's true.
Branding works.
There you go.
That's the main reason why inflation went down. They passed a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act.
Because that comes up in the context of Harris, who has unveiled at least the broad strokes of her economic program.
Right.
So you did a 2-year look in on the Inflation Reduction Act. You also had a piece that referenced that was about a piece that Jonathan Chait wrote, comparing the Biden presidency with the Obama presidency, and really in terms of like what Harris has apparently, or at least seemingly done, which is to pick up this mantle. And let's just start with this notion. Chait was, as you recounted, to be honest, I didn't read his piece. But as you recounted, he said Biden sort of inexplicably picked up the mantle of the progressive left in the Democratic Party, and at least in the context of the economic policy, I want to make that clear to everybody. Pursued what I would say the most progressive economic policies of maybe since Johnson, and he was like, it was inexplicable, and let's just take it from there because it was explicable. You made the point. Yeah. There were two very prominent reasons for that: Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah. So, and just to be clear, Harold Meyerson wrote that piece.
I'm sorry. Okay.
For the Prospect, but yeah, I'm familiar with it, obviously. So, yeah, I mean, the whole psychology of this goes back to the fact that John Chait wrote a book. John Chait, my old University of Michigan pal, who we went there at the same time. Actually, I'm using the word pal very loosely.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book at the end of 2016 called Audacity about how great the Obama era was. And they actually had to recall the book and change some of it because Trump won. So he had to recalibrate this entire book that was put out and released because the fact that it was not a lasting legacy, at least in the short term for Obama, was made clear by the fact that his handpicked successor lost the 2016 election. So everything to that point kind of is John Chait angry about the fact that he had to change his book and making up for this fact that his side, the agenda that he prefers, which is keep anyone to the left of like Bill Clinton circa 1996 out of the decision-making portals of the Democratic Party, lost the ability to dictate terms in the Biden regime. And there, yes, as you say, there's a very good reason for this. Going all the way back to 2016, when Bernie Sanders won primaries and had millions and millions of people vote for him. In 2020, Sanders again won early primaries, almost won the nomination, and had millions and millions of people vote for him. And Joe Biden is a party man. Joe Biden was a neoliberal when neoliberalism was cool in the 1990s. And now in the present day, he's in the center of where the Democratic Party is today. And what he did, instead of the classic positioning of you move to the left for the primary, you move to the center for the general, what he did is he did a unity task force to try to create a popular front against Trump in 2020. And it was successful. I mean, the part of this that nobody seems to figure out is that Joe Biden won the election based on building that unity coalition, building that unity task force, and then putting together an agenda that was really based on that, at least at the domestic level, once again, to stipulate. Joe Biden didn't really have a big policy apparatus during the 2020 presidential primary. He kind of had to go to Bernie's and the Elizabeth Warrens of the world just to have something to say. It's actually an inverse of what happened after the financial crisis. There's a famous line that Tim Geithner has said often, and the line is "plan beats no plan." So after the financial crisis, the only person who came forward initially with a plan to deal with the banks was the sort of neoliberal Geithner-Summers plan. And that beat no plan, which is what everybody else had. And this is the inverse of that. So Biden didn't really have a plan for governing other than let's beat Trump and bind the nation together, right? So the plans were in the hands of the Sanders-Warren faction of the party, and the plan beat no plan. And Jonathan Chait is very upset about this. and he's trying to rewrite history essentially.
And we should say, like, what you're talking about is, I think, is fascinating. I mean, this is why when people talk about Project 2025, they get so nervous, because this is a huge plan that is there. They have not just a plan, but they also have a plan to execute the plan. They have the apparatus. They have like the personnel. Right. This rarely exists on the Democratic side. Project for American Progress existed like that for a while. I think maybe in
right.
Maybe a little bit.
Well, you want to do the history? Let's do the history. So the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, was after the loss of Mondale
Dukakis
in '84.
Right.
Dukakis was a DLC guy, right? So he was.
Was he?
Yes.
Are you thinking of Tsongas?
Dukakis was also kind of associated with that. The whole competence frame is a very DLC frame.
He was yes, a technocrat. That was his big.
He was a technocrat. So they built over 4 years. Al Fromm and all these guys built a policy apparatus and the talent, the people to actually put it together. And the DLC took over the party essentially when Clinton won in '92, and they kept a hold on it for a long period of time. And the Center for American Progress, which you just referenced, that was kind of a presidency in waiting.
Right.
It was kind of built that way. Project 2025 is kind of an offshoot of that way of thinking, that the way you do this is through, lining everything up in advance. And Elizabeth Warren's project for the last 12 years, her mantra is personnel is policy. And she has put people in place, whether from, alumni of what she has been doing, or just, talent that she's put together and endorsed, and got them into the government. Now, it's very funny that Third Way, which is the moderate faction of the Democratic Party, I believe it's Third Way, maybe it's not them, but they put something out this week called the Moderate Talent Pipeline, which it sounds like a bunch of mediocre people. like why did you name it the Moderate Talent Pipeline? Do I want someone with moderate talent to be in my government? But they recognize that what Elizabeth Warren did, and to a lesser extent what Bernie Sanders did, was very smart. You line up the people who are able to do the job in advance. And you do that in such a way that when everybody's scrambling and looking around for people to place in the thousands, among the thousands of political appointees that are in every government, if you have the people there that are available, that's might be a place where you look. And so I think everybody's figured this out now, that this is kind of how you do it. You pregame the whole thing.
Okay, so with that said, Harris comes out with her policy statement. Give us like a to the extent that we know. I mean, it has been fascinating, because the reason why I bring up Chait is not just because I still remember the Iraq War, and I know that you do too, and others, but because he seems to be representative, or at least illustrative, of a huge pushback that's happening right now. Like the Washington Post editorial board came out, and said that Harris's policies are gimmicks. And Catherine Rampell, I think it is, from the Washington Post, also said, like, you're playing into Donald Trump's hands when he calls you a communist, which is, I mean, just beyond. And there's a lot of pushback, which is, it's fascinating, because there's this quality of like, well, it's gimmicks, but it's also the wrong gimmicks. You need to do something that's serious, but we don't want you to do something like that's serious in that manner. Give us a sense of like what, talk about her proposals, and what that is indicative of.
All right. There's a few things going on. So a week ago, I was actually in Las Vegas for the last of the Harris-Walz kind of barnstorming tour of battleground states. And there was one policy that was mentioned there. And that I would put actually in the category of gimmick. It was sort of a gift to the culinary union, which is very big in Las Vegas. It's the workers in the hotels. And she adopted Trump's policy of no taxes on tips, eliminating taxes for tips, which is, I think, a policy gimmick. It's also, I think, bad policy.
Right.
The idea that a retail worker making $40,000 a year and a restaurant server making $40,000 a year, one isn't taxed on those tips because of the way that they actually get the salary, and someone else is taxed on that salary because it's obtained in a different way. That seems like a bad policy idea. Also, even at that level, at the $40,000 level, most people at that level don't pay any federal tax. There's a large standard deduction. There's the earned income tax credit. There's just you're not going to do a lot for people who really need it if you eliminate taxes on tips, whereas high-end servers who don't maybe need the help as much are going to get this large tax break.
And how would that apply to Social Security tax?
Apparently it wouldn't. Like what the Harris campaign said is, in their incarnation, it would be only on the income tax, not on the payroll tax.
Okay.
So if it was on the payroll tax, it'd be even worse, because then you'd basically just be borrowing that money and
from
not
Social Security. Yeah.
Funding Social Security, but also, those servers would get nothing in retirement because they wouldn't have paid in at that level. So it would be really bad if it was payroll tax. As income tax is just a silly kind of gimmick. I think that the benefit you get for that in Nevada, where the culinary union is really powerful, you might lose in Pennsylvania with the 90% of people who don't get their pay through tips being mad that somebody who does is getting a tax break and they're not.
Right.
So
right.
I think it's a bad idea. And I'm worried that since next year, really the whole conversation will be around taxes. The fact that now both parties support this means it might have to go into the mix. And that means a relative loss of whatever revenue that you're going to potentially get if you, raise the corporate tax or eliminate some of the Trump tax cuts on the wealthy. All that money that was going to go towards something productive is now going to go towards this gimmick of eliminating tax on tips. So I don't love the idea. And I felt like it was kind of where the political people were really driving this policy. But then we fast forward.
Let me just add, I just want to say, because we have gone over this on the show, I just want to add, you haven't even addressed the construction of this policy on the Republican side. If you look at like the Ted Cruz bill that went out there, tips could be, I'm a podcast guy, and
Absolutely.
we don't have subscriptions. We call it tips. And
we call it tips.
Send me
exactly.
And tip. And so that,
and the idea that Harris would put guardrails around that is very difficult. Anytime you have a part of the tax code that has a benefit, people are going to swim toward that part of the tax
and the wealthy
code.
people are going to be the ones who swim
and they know how to do it. They have
exactly.
the lawyers.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're going to figure it out.
So that even there's a two-part criticism. Okay. So but everything else.
Yeah. Put that aside. So then we have this policy speech that's focused on the cost of living and bringing costs down. And in the interim, Harris, it leaks out that Harris is using Brian Deese, who was the head of the National Economic Council under Biden, Bharat Ramamurthy, who was the deputy to Deese, and also Elizabeth Warren, staffer and chief policy advisor. These people, Gene Sperling as well, he's a veteran of practically every administration in the last 30 years, but is very focused on the child tax credit over the last 5 years. All these people who, whether they were already there or they eventually drifted there, kind of followed the Biden trajectory, right? Of, okay, we're going to break with these policies of the past. We're going to focus on full employment. We're going to focus on industrial policy. We're going to focus on competition policy and aggressively enforcing antitrust. All these people suddenly are in orbit of Harris, mainly because they have the ideas. Once again, plan beats no plan, right? They're the ones who have been forming policy over the last 4 years. So we get to this North Carolina speech that Harris gives, and it's really focused in 3 buckets: healthcare, housing, and food, and which are the main drivers of, I think, worries about cost of living. You could throw education in there as well. They don't mention it in the speech, but those buckets are some of the biggest, right? So on housing, it's actually kind of interesting. You can see that there are 2 kind of competing ideas here. One is the sort of YIMBY idea that all we have to do is increase supply. There's another idea that's more focused on rent control, more focused on suppressing the ability of corporate landlords and algorithms to gouge people on prices of housing. She adopts both, essentially. She says, yeah, we're going to put money into a fund to try to increase supply. We're going to build 3 million new units, but also we're going to take the tax break away from Wall Street when they're acquiring homes and hoarding them for rent. We're going to crack down on algorithmic price fixing, like RealPage, you probably have covered in the past, which aggregates all of the information in a rental market and then encourages all of those landlords to raise prices. So she adopts kind of both of those, right? Then in terms of healthcare, it was mostly backwards looking. Earlier last week, we found out the 10 prices on prescription drugs that were negotiated through Medicare. Those prices are going to go down as much as 79% through that negotiation. It would be good if they were actually available now, but they won't be until 2026.
Right.
But you know, this is the beginning of every year we're going to get this announcement of more price drops for these prescription drugs within Medicare, and she wants to extend that to all payers, so people who aren't over 65 get the benefit of that and get the benefit of reducing, capping out-of-pocket expenses on prescription drugs, $35 a month insulin, things like that. And then we have food, and in this area, this is where the wonks have gone crazy. This is the area where the Catherine Rampels of the world have called it communist. They assume that what Harris was talking about was price controls on food. Essentially, they ran right to that conclusion. In reality, what she was calling for is not very different than what we already have on the books in about 37 states. And that is an anti-price gouging law. We don't have that at the federal level, but we have it in many states, including New York, including Texas, including Florida. And what it says is, in a time of economic stress or dislocation, a hurricane, a national emergency, you can't, as a pandemic, you can't, as a consumer or as a business, just jack up your prices. And we actually have an example of this in the pandemic. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, put out a report just a few weeks ago about what grocery businesses were doing during the pandemic. And what they were doing is they were forcing suppliers to sell to them first rather than independent stores. And that was increasing their market power, and it was leading to higher prices. It was leading to, independent stores not having any goods for sale, and also increasing prices there because they just had nothing available to people and they had to make back their profit. So this is almost a direct response to that, what Harris is talking about. It's learning from the past. We saw what happened in the pandemic, and we don't want that to happen again. Now, she's kind of, just sort of leaving it out there that, yeah, maybe this would help us in the here and now. But the way that she talks about that is she talks about the concentrations of power in the food industry. So, whether it's meat packing, meat and chicken and beef and all those companies, there's a concentration at the top in those particular industries. There's a big merger that was announced last week, proposed merger between Mars and a company called Kellanova, which is actually all of Kellogg's snack products. So there's like 50 brands now that are going to be in this new conglomeration, and that's true across the space in food companies. Unilever, ConAgra, there's a whole bunch of food companies, not many, I mean 10 maybe, that you go down the aisle and you think you have a lot of choices, and they're all one of those 10 companies, right? So breaking up those concentrations of power and trying to get more competition going in those sectors would also have the effect of depressing prices, even if it wasn't in a national emergency.
Okay, so there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
The one question in the housing thing, one of the things that Biden had in his sort of Hail Mary period towards the end had offered, had suggested a 5% sort of national rent control. Where does that exist now?
So it wasn't mentioned in the Friday speech. However, Kamala Harris has talked about that on the campaign trail and other speeches. So as far as as I can tell, that's still a live issue. And now let's be clear that all of these are proposals. They're campaign proposals. If we don't get 50 votes in the Senate, we're not going to get any of these things. And we should be clear about that. But
I want to go because there's a meta question about that in a second that I want to get to. But yeah, with that caveat in mind, moving to the prescription drugs, that 79% reduction in those 10 Medicare drugs, the Biden administration's had to provide like subsidies to the insurance companies because they're so reliant, it seems to me, on those expenses. Explain that for me briefly.
Yeah.
But also
specifically, yeah.
I do know that she also mentioned the middlemen. One of your bailiwicks, the prescription benefit management companies, who are also now the insurance companies.
Yes, that's right. Okay, so let's take those two in kind. So first, the situation with insurance companies is really about the out-of-pocket cap. So if you think about this, if you have an out-of-pocket cap on all your prescription drugs, this year for seniors it's $3,000 a year. Next year it goes down to $2,000 a year. The rest of that money, so if you're above that cap in terms of what you're paying and what you should be liable for out of pocket, the insurance company has to pay that, right? So the insurance companies are saying, well, hey, you put a cap here and now we got to pay the rest of it. Keep in mind, this is Medicare Part D, which are all private plans. Right. There is no public Medicare Part D. The prescription drug benefit in Medicare, which was passed by George W. Bush, was an entirely private system. So these private Part D plans are saying, well, now we're going to have to bear the burden of these catastrophic, prescription drug costs that go above the cap. And so we're going to increase prescription drug prices for premiums, or for the Part D premium. We're going to increase the premium. And what the Biden administration said, okay, as a demonstration project, we will subsidize you for 3 years. They can do that under the Medicare laws. We're going to subsidize you so you can't increase the price that much. So it's a cat and mouse game that's going on there. The real answer, of course, is to fold everything back into traditional Medicare so they can spread the costs, right? So instead of, because these are Part D plans, they just do prescription drugs. So if you increase the cost of prescription drugs, they have nowhere else to go to make profit, right? They have nowhere else to go to cover it. If it's all within Medicare, they can reduce utilization here. They can, not pay for as expensive treatments. I mean, people don't like this, but there are also ways to reduce admissions.
It's the efficiency
through preventative care, the efficiency, all of that stuff
that exists in terms of like volume.
So that's kind of the dynamic there. Now, talking about PBMs, yes, I was very pleased to see in the Friday speech, Kamala Harris talk about pharmacy benefit managers, which are these middlemen that sit in between health plans and drug companies and pharmacies. And they're the only ones that know what anybody is paying for what. So that it's very easy for them to skim off the top. They are supposed to negotiate rebates with drug companies and pass those savings on. But they realize that the higher the list price, the higher the rebate they can get. And they keep a lot of those rebates. And so this actually has the effect of pushing prices up rather than bringing prices down. There is a great bill, bipartisan bill, by the way, in Congress that may well get a vote by the end of the year. And it would be good for Harris to actually endorse that bill. Jake Auchincloss, who's from Massachusetts, is the co-sponsor on the Democratic side. Not sure I remember who the co-sponsor on the Republican side is, but it would increase transparency. It would crack down. It would say all rebates have to go to the individual and to the health plan. It would crack down on the kinds of things where they steer drug plans to, or steer patients to get their drugs through mail order pharmacies rather than independent pharmacies. They run the mail order pharmacies, the PBMs. So of course they're steering people towards that option. And yes, as you say,
constant calls from CVS. They're my PBM care, whatever and I cannot tell you. I hear from them more than I do my kids about signing up for their.
And CVS, just to your point, CVS bought Aetna a few years back. And so they're with a large health insurance company. The other two big PBMs and the top three control about 85% of all drug transactions. Express Scripts is part of Cigna, and Optum Rx is part of United Health. So now when you're talking about PBMs, you're really talking about the insurance companies. And the insurance companies have managed this game so that they know more about drug transactions than anybody else in the system. And they can extract from all of those other players for their own benefit. And so Congress catching on to that. I'm glad to see Harris, aware of it as well.
All right. So overall, it's clear that there.
Whoa.
I don't know what that's about.
Congratulations.
I have no idea why I did that. I got to somehow figure out how to turn that off. I know if I do,
or on, or just have it on all the time. Yeah,
I got a problem with that.
Oh, that's cool.
Too. I don't know how to turn this off. But it's clear that there is a sense that Harris is extending the Biden is extending Bidenomics, and again, just proposals, whether she can implement, whether she intends to implement. But let's talk about that meta story, because what does it tell us? Because I feel like the lesson about the Obama years that the Biden people supposedly learned, and I feel like they learned it to some extent. I feel like to some extent they didn't, particularly in terms of Biden wanting to try and make the Build Back Better bipartisan. That was the beginning of the end of that, it seems to me. He brought the Republicans in, and then when they couldn't come up with anything, he brought in Sinema and Portman, as supposedly to do due diligence, and that's where things fell apart. It gave Manchin and opponents of this time to sort of organize. But one of the other things that I think Obama did is he won his election with a certain constituency that I think for a lot of us, he betrayed in some ways. I mean, he ran, there was a lot of people saying he's not an ideologue, and he was using populist words maybe, but did not deliver on those policies, largely speaking. He said he was going to put on his soft shoes and walk with unions. And when there was a huge opportunity for that in Wisconsin, he didn't do it. And that ended up costing Democrats 1,000 seats over the course of 8 years. 1,000 seats. A whole class or two of Democrats couldn't run for governor, because they were wiped out. And now we're seeing the resurgence of that. Like when we have 6 governors now who could have been vice president. That's what this is about in many ways. And the opposite happened with Hillary Clinton, right? You had Chuck Schumer going out there for every blue collar worker we lose in Pittsburgh, we pick up 2 in the Philly suburbs. I don't know if it was Schumer or if it was Ed Randell who said that, but regardless, that seemed to be the idea. We want to manage who elects us on some, there's only a certain amount of latitude with this because the Democrats are the Democrats and the Republicans are the Republicans, but you try and create your constituency, and then you can follow policies that will satisfy them or not. And if you don't satisfy the constituency that elected you, you're going to have trouble in the off-year election and in the following re-election. And so what does it tell us that she's coming out and campaigning this way?
I mean, everything's still contingent. I think the term I saw used in the New York Times was strategic vagueness. I think that's kind of the hallmark of where we're at with Kamala Harris now. She certainly has.
That's also the case on foreign policy, but we're not talking about that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. She certainly has some advisors that are committed, I think, to furthering the Biden agenda. And I think she has some advisors that are committed to breaking with the Biden agenda. And I think, in 2008, we heard a lot about Barack Obama's team of rivals, that he was putting this Lincoln-esque team of people who just didn't like each other together and trying to get the best policy out of that. And it was all crap. It wasn't true at all. Everybody was very much on the same wavelength. I think with Harris,
Robert Rubin's wavelength,
the Robert Rubin policy, exactly. I think with Harris, you're seeing more of a possible actual team of rivals. That there is some understanding that she's getting advice from a lot of different directions. And I think it's going to be a jump ball in terms of where she's actually going to go. I mean, you don't know what the crises are that are going to come up. You don't know where, she's going to have the opportunity to make, a real difference. I think that, as far as everything that's come out, you have to sort of assess it of, okay, are these legislative ideas or are these, administrative ideas? And, a number of the things she talked about in that speech on Friday, she could do on her own, continue the aggressive antitrust enforcement that we see.
Yep.
In terms of the healthcare stuff, there's a lot you can do on the side, not just keeping going the negotiations on prescription drugs, which she's obviously going to do, but there's even more that can be done. So, we'll be readying as the fall goes on the sort of next edition of the day one agenda to see,
yes, I bet.
to figure out what what we could actually possibly do. So I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity there. And the question will be whether Harris will take it. But, we still have 77 days or whatever until the election. She's got to win that first.
Maybe this is for a different interview, but I'm curious as to the strategy of the progressives to hang in there with Biden. And essentially what it looked like to basically say, we want X, Y, and Z policies. And he came out with some of those sort of lefty, the 5% rent cap and
there was Supreme Court stuff,
reform, and,
all of which Harris has held on to, by the way. I mean, so in that sense, you have to say, well, what the progressives did ended up, having at least some impact. Harris is going out with that same Supreme Court reform program. She's held on to, at least rhetorically, the rent stuff. I think what's clear is that, Harris's concept of how she's going to win this election is she's going to speak to where voters are in terms of cost of living. She's going to speak to the other popular parts of the Biden agenda without being Biden. And that seems to have worked, right? I mean, if you look at the polls,
so far,
she is not being blamed on the economy for certain things. In other contexts, she's kind of not being blamed for Gaza in certain ways. And, she's been able to show some distance because people simply don't believe she was at the center of those policies being made. And so she's able to articulate. I mean, a lot of this stuff that she did last Friday was already the Biden agenda.
Right.
She's just articulating it in a different way and without the baggage of being tied to someone who was 81 years old and wasn't able to sell the policies very well.
All right, last question, because this sort of ties in and undercuts, or I should say undergirds a lot of all of this conversation. Inflation. Give me your sense and the sense of like where I guess the academic research is on this. What contributed to inflation? And if you can give me percentages, because I'm spending my time interspersed with my woodworking Instagram accounts that I follow. Like I get a couple like these, I don't know, they're like investment people or something, and they'll say something about inflation, and that's the only time I comment on anything. I'm like, it wasn't because we flooded the country with money. But tell us what the research says.
Well, I mean, it's very clear. You just look, every country on earth had pretty much the same arc in terms of inflation. After the initial stages of the pandemic, inflation went up, and in the last couple of years, it has eased. Now, if you look at the United States trajectory, it eased at a greater degree than any other country in the world, industrialized country at least, and is now sitting, if you look at certain measures, it's sitting at the Federal Reserve target. If you look at other measures, it's slightly above the Federal Reserve target of 2%. And all these other countries in the world, they didn't increase spending to the same degree as us, or
relative to their GDP, right?
Relative to GDP. Right. The idea that that spending alone was responsible for our inflationary period, you have to sort of put blinders on to the rest of the world, which had varying degrees of spending and yet the exact same trajectory, the same parabolic arc. So I think it's rather silly to say that. It's obvious that there were supply chain issues that we've written about pretty extensively. Right. And when those supply chain problems eased, we got to a place where inflation came down. It wasn't really due to the increase in interest rates. What that has done is mainly depressed investment
and raised cost of rent, it seems to me.
And raised costs, in fact, particularly around housing, because that's a very common channel. Mortgage rates went up. Yep. Investment ended up dropping down. In fact, the Inflation Reduction Act, which flooded a lot of money toward investment into the system, a lot of that was kind of blunted, not a lot, but a good deal of it was blunted by the Federal Reserve interest rate increase. If they didn't increase to the degree that they have, or if they have taken it down, which they probably will do in September, at least a beginning of it, then we probably would have had more. If you look at manufacturing construction, it's a straight line up for the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And that's because of the IRA. And if the Fed wasn't trying to sort of counteract that, it would probably be in more of a straight line up. And those are eventually going to translate into jobs because the factories get built after a certain period. The construction is done, and then we get we get the production jobs out of that. I wrote about this quite a bit in my 2-year kind of summary of the IRA.
Yeah, we're going to link to that. People should read that. I just wanted to add a couple other things. I mean, you have that dispositive argument in terms of relative to other countries, but we also can see, increased prices significantly at various food chains and whatnot, and then massive stock buybacks and massive dividends paid out to shareholders, and the margins in food went up, like they spiked to a point where, in other words, those are profits. And
Right.
if
And what we saw in America is corporate profits around 2022 spiked. They reset at a higher level, and even though inflation has dropped, they've stayed there. Those corporate price margins have stayed higher, despite the easing of input costs through inflation. And we wrote about this in our pricing issue. The pandemic provided an opportunity to use these new strategies, whether it was technological or using surveillance tactics to know what you buy and know what you're going to prefer. And that all has increased the surplus for those companies relative to consumers. And just to take this back sort of full circle, I think when you hear a Jonathan Chait saying these are bad ideas to crack down on price gouging, or Catherine Rampell to say that these are communist ideas to crack down on price gouging, they fundamentally don't buy the story that we just have expressed here.
That's why
they fundamentally disagree with it. They look at Econ 101, supply and demand. There was too much money in the economy. The demand went up, and that's why the price went up. And as that's being reduced by the Federal Reserve, then the price goes back down. It's pretty clear to me that is not the case. That's not what the data show. And everything kind of flows from there. There is an ideological battle around the economy between the people who were very comfortable with the Clinton and Obama neoliberal era, and the people who forwarded this change in philosophy under Biden. And we'll see what happens in the future. And that fight is playing out now amid a new presidential candidate who is not who may be something of a jump ball. Was a lot of her thoughts on this haven't been super well known. People were projecting their wishes onto her. People like Reid Hoffman going out and saying, fire Lena Khan. And so there's this sort of warfare going on between these two philosophies in this sort of battle for the soul of Kamala Harris, if you want to talk about it that way. And that speech last week shows that the Biden side has a leg up. I think that's the way to say it.
Great way to summarize it. David Dayen, always a pleasure. We're going to link to all the pieces we mentioned today at the American Prospect, but while you're over at the American Prospect, I'm sure by the time we air this, there's going to be a lot more, and at the convention.
Yes, I will tell you. We have 4 or 5 people who are going to be at the convention. We're going to be writing dispatches every day while we're there. All of them are going to be on prospect.org/DNC-2024. And it'll be the whole site. I mean, we're devoting the whole site to the DNC this week. So if you just go to prospect.org, you'll find it. And we're going to be giving you as much of the color of the convention. You've been to conventions. They're strange places. There's if you just listen on TV, you hear about fighting corporate America and bringing a policy back to the people. And then if you go outside, you see every major corporation holding a cocktail hour, right? So they're odd places, and our goal is going to be to bring you the side of the convention that you don't often see if you're just watching on television. So we're going to try to bring you the newsmakers, the ostentatious display of wealth that you see at these things, and give you a real flavor for that.
David Dayen, American Prospect, thanks so much. We will link to all that coverage as well.
Thank you.
We are back, folks, and we are going to wrap up the free part of this program and head into the fun half. Hope you enjoyed that conversation with David Dayen and Sam. I heard a little bit of it, but the economic piece, particularly the antitrust, and keeping on Lena Khan is going to be one of the things that we need to push the Harris campaign to stick to, including Gaza policy. I think these are the 2 pressure points here. continuing down this like antitrust path, as well as, of course, changing course on Gaza. So I'm glad that Sam was able to grab David before he headed to the DNC so they could have that discussion. By the way, this program relies on your support. So if you would like to support us, if you want to see this show continue for years to come, to give you this kind of coverage, you can go to jointhemajorityreport.com and become a member where you can IM the show. We read your IMs on air, including IMs like this. Super Seeger, Sam is not beating the boomer allegations with that Zoom background snafu. He doesn't seem to know how to turn off that feature, it appears.
Yeah, there's been about 3 instances where he's pretty much every time he's recorded at his own location through Zoom, he has, if he does a thumbs up, they'll get a little thumb up bubble that comes up, which is nice. And I think we just have to accept it that Sam might have fireworks going on behind him through the miracle of AI, which is going to change all of our lives, and you could just get a little taste there.
Right. Oh my gosh. It's like
the value add is
like
crazy.
It's like seeing Michelangelo paint right in front of me when you see how AI is changing Zoom calls.
Hurry, tech officers, please invest billions of dollars into this technology.
That's apparently falling off a cliff a little bit. Well, that's something to watch.
Who could have foresaw that?
Teacher Dan says, explain how not taxing a low-wage wait staff tips doesn't help them again. It's not more money in their pockets. Teacher Dan, I didn't hear how Sam and David were talking about it, but I think the point is not that it doesn't help them. It's just that it's probably bad policy.
I can explain how it won't help them. What if, for instance, the earned income tax credit policy doesn't judges that as pure income and all of a sudden moves them out of a more expanded EITC credit, which puts them back at zero.
Ooh.
So yeah, very easily it could do that.
She's apparently rolling out like income requirements for this, where she's saying that like the no tax on tips thing would be if you earn under 75K. I still don't like that as much as, say, fighting for eliminating the sub minimum wage for tipped workers. That's a policy where that helps everybody, and then also doesn't create some of these unnecessary carve-outs where there could be loopholes exploited by maybe categorizing something as tipped work that isn't tipped work, for example.
The frame also, raises for American workers should not be coming from what they pay into the government. Now, I'm fine generally with say, incentivizing labor income over passive income, which is the opposite of what we do in this country. But I think that the raise should come from the share that goes to bosses and not from the government typically. And I think that's generally the stance to take. And the tip economy itself is one not set up for the benefit of the workers.
The tip economy was an invention of post-slavery America as a way to get out of paying largely black workers a wage that was living.
And
so
it's pure patriarchal.
It's a relic.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are certain areas of the country where, like for instance, Las Vegas, where you might be able to use that to divide the working class along policy lines like that. But the overall emphasis and why people are a little bit resentful of that is that system doesn't work for most people.
Yeah.
It's not everyone is getting the giant Las Vegas tips from high rollers that are 4 drinks in.
Right.
So we need to what I think, and this is still a shift in the political economy of the Democratic Party, is we need to be doing these things through like minimum wages and health benefits and things like that, and also forcing bosses to pay more of their employees more.
Teacher Dan says, yes, fight off lower wages for tip work. Thanks again for explaining. Io and Ryan, I waited tables for years, and you only have to claim a certain amount. It's best to claim everything so you have a better credit. Emma is right. Get rid of sub-minimum wage. That's something I'd prefer. Look, there's so much flexibility at this point. This was an ask seemingly from the unions in Nevada, and this is a cynical political move, I think, to try to get Nevada, and
if you're going to do bad
she's
policy,
trying to outflank. But yeah,
to me, if you're going to do a bad policy, it's if a union's asking for it, that's one of the better reasons to do it.
And I think that the fact that she's coming out today by saying that there's going to be an income cap means this is flexible. She just wants to give into the union ask and then move in a direction where like there's a lot of ways that we can go in terms of tips. So I don't necessarily think this is like set. I think she was just trying to subvert what Trump was doing here, in the way that like JD Vance said, "Oh, I'm for the child tax credit.
Right.
I'm for $5,000," and then
Me
she
too.
comes out and she goes, "I'm for $6,000 in the first year." But what's also important is that the Republicans are way more disingenuous about their claims, specifically on the child tax credit, because JD Vance missed the vote for the last effort to expand the child tax credit. He just didn't show up. And then when it was a part of the negotiations that, Manchin took a hatchet to, JD Vance was running for Congress and running for Senate, I should say. And so you can't find how he voted on that, but you can see how literally every Republican basically voted against it. And every Democrat, or most Democrats besides Manchin and stuff, were for it. So, it's a way to kind of sideline the gimmicks that are not sincere from the Trump campaign, and I'm fine with that from an electoral politics standpoint.
Yeah, but like that doesn't mean the principle of we should be chasing who can lower taxes more is a good one.
Yeah.
And like the idea that it's like more money in working people's pockets, like there's other ways to do that besides lowering the amount that they contribute to society.
Exactly. So with that said, again, join themajorityreport.com. Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning?
Left Reckoning last night. I had Elias Cepeda on, who is doing some of the protests with PSL and some of the other organizations outside the DNC. We also talked in the postgame, patreon.com/Left Reckoning, about 10 minutes of worth of Russell Brand's show, Kamala's Communist Agenda Exposed. I got people might know that I have like sort of a long history of I probably listen to more Russell Brand than anyone else, to my shame, I guess now. But back like 15 years ago.
I saw him live.
I saw him live out in Nassau Coliseum in Long Island. Actually, the first few weeks I lived in New York. He's an insane person. He covered this Doritos Gate. Have you heard of Doritos Gate?
Oh, yes, apparently, because Kamala Harris wanted Doritos at her stop at Sheetz in Western Pennsylvania. Definitely superior to Wawa, by the way.
So we played Russell Brand spent about 6 minutes on that, so we watched that. And also he spent 2 minutes on another issue, which is almost as important as Doritos Gate, which is people protesting the Democrats' complicity in genocide at the DNC. And he covered that by saying, isn't it weird how this person protesting the Democrats is wearing a mask because they care about COVID, some things that, which Russell says, might not even happen at all. Like he's worthless idiot.
He's just whoring himself out for a check at this point.
Yeah.
Has his acting career dried up because he's been credibly accused of sexual assault?
I think so. And he's a distressed asset that's been bought up by venture capitalists who Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation, aka Rumble, which is a publicly traded corporation, bought him for cheap. And now he's doing, and it's funny because he's like, look at all these TikTokers that the DNC is paying to like artificially, market the party. And it's like, first of all, yeah, that happens. Welcome to politics. Like the Rat Pack was doing shit for the Kennedys. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but also, bro, you interviewed Ron DeSantis for 45 minutes on Rumble's platform.
Yeah.
Like, was that an authentic interaction? Was that just because you were seeking truth with your awakening wonders? So yeah, as you can tell, I got a little bit animated. And so patreon.com/Left Reckoning if you want to hear us go into that.
Cantor Fitzgerald Acquisition Corporation, that's Rumble, but Cantor Fitzgerald, its chief executive, was just having dinner with Donald Trump and Bill Ackman and a bunch of other billionaire people.
All supporters of Israel, I imagine, too.
Oh, yeah.
So, interesting.
Interesting. On ESPN, we spoke a bit about the WNBA and this like truncated playoff race because like they're cramming in a bunch of games before the playoffs start after the Olympics, and Caitlin Clark breaking the rookie assist record. And then we also talked a bit about preseason ball. Some of the good: Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, maybe the best rookie quarterback class since. Oh God, I don't know. I would have to think about it, but looks like it could be.
Consult your notebooks.
I would have to. And then versus my quarterback, Daniel Jones, coming back off an ACL and immediately throwing a pick six. I don't want to talk about it, but I did talk about it. YouTube.com/ESVN show. People are really upset about my take on sheets. I mean, look, I went to college in Pennsylvania, and Wawa is rich man's Panera in the sense of sometimes these things taste a little bit too much like hospital food. Like, I would rather have sheets and the fries there than I would have some of the stuff from Wawa just feels a little like a little bit of a cafeteria situation. Anyway, that's just my take. I don't know what to tell you. All right, guys. Well, you know what? No calls today. We'll take calls tomorrow. We're going to take calls tomorrow.
We're working 2 doubles. Well, I worked double last night too, so we're working doubles in a row here, folks.
Yes, and we have just so many fun clips. So I wanted to get to all that.
Oh yeah,
stuff.
you haven't seen Crowder in a while. Well, he's back.
Yes, we have Crowder.
Hysterical as ever.
We have Ilhan Omar speaking at the Uncommitted rally just minutes ago, and we also have some more footage from the DNC. So stay tuned, folks. Become a member if you want access to this. We'll see you in the fun half.
Okay, Emma, please.
Well, I feel that my voice is sorely lacking on the majority report.
Wait, whoa. Look, Sam is unpopular.
I do deserve a vacation at Disney World. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is my pleasure to welcome Emma to the show.
It is Thursday.
I think you need to take over for Sam.
Yes, please.
No. I'm gonna pause you right there.
Wait, what?
You can't encourage Emma to live like this. And I'll tell you why. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
What?
Tour, sushi, and poker.
Tim's upset.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Was offered a tour, sushi, and
that's what we call it in the biz.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Right.
Tour, sushi, and poker.
We're gonna get demonetized.
I just think that what you did to Tim Pool was mean.
Free speech.
That's not what we're about here. Look at how sad he's become now. You shouldn't even talk about it because I think you're responsible.
I probably am in a certain way, but let's get to the meltdown here.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Oh my God.
Tour,
wow.
Sushi. I'm sorry, I'm losing my fucking mind. So was offered a tour, sushi, and poker with the boys.
Logic.
Tour, sushi, and poker with the boys. Boy. Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour.
I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a little kid.
Had this debate 7,000 times.
A little kid. I think I'm like a little kid. I think I'm like a kid.
Tour. I'm losing my fucking mind.
Some people just don't understand.
So I'm not trying to be a dick right now, but I absolutely think the U.S. should be providing me with a wife and kids.
That's not what we're talking about here. Okay, all right.
It's not a fun job.
Tour? That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. Willy Wonka tour? That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. What's that offered a tour? That's a real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. That's a tour? A real thing. That's real thing. Real thing. What's that offered a tour?
Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Rogan has done it again.
That offered a tour? That's a real thing. That's poker with the boys.
I think he might be blowing it out of proportion.
Real thing. That's poker with the boys. That offered a tour? That's a real thing. That's poker.
Let's go, Joey.
Tour? Sushi and poker with the boys.
Take it easy, boy.
Tour? Sushi and poker.
Things have really gotten out of hand.
Sushi and poker with the boys.
Delusional.
Tour?
Deluded.
Sushi.
You don't have a clue as to what's going on. Live YouTube.
Sam has
Twitch,
the weight of the world on his shoulders.
Poggers.
Sam doesn't want to do this show anymore. It was so much easier when the majority report was just you. You were happy.
Let's change the subject.
Right.
Rangers and Knicks are doing great.
Now shut up. You don't want people saying reckless things on your program.
That's one of the most difficult parts about this show.
This is a pro-killing podcast.
I'm thinking maybe it's time we bury the hatchet.
Left is best.
Violet tour?
Don't be foolish and don't fucking tweet at me and don't binge. The way Emma has cucked all of these people, love it.
That's where my heart is, so I wrote my honors thesis about it.
Oh,
Sorry,
she wrote an honest thesis. I guess I should hand the main mic to you now.
You are to the right of me on foreign policy.
We already fund Israel, dude. Are you against that?
That's a tougher question I have an answer to.
Incredible theme song.
Hi, Bumbler.
Emma Vigeland, absolutely one of my favorite people. Actually, not just in the game, like period.
We are back. It is the fun half. Lee Backwater says, "Do you guys have any favorite political movies or books? I really like the movie Vice, and I'm looking for more political media that isn't military propaganda." In terms of like narrative movies, I mean, Network is just like a very good examination of what cable news ended up becoming. I mean, it came out like a few years, 4 or 5 years before CNN was a thing, like the 24-hour news network, and it was incredibly prescient in that regard. A movie that has good politics that came out recently is Judas and the Black Messiah, and that like pretty accurately, I think talks about, at least from my understanding, I haven't read a ton of criticisms about the movie, but at least the Fred Hampton story, it portrays.
It's an okay mythologization. I'd say.
You have some
There's some
differences?
critiques from I don't remember them off the top of my head, but there was some certain things that were excised that maybe could have been emphasized. But
okay, at the very least, it like shows who the real villains are in that in that saga.
I still love, and I don't know how well it's aged, but I do love Oliver Stone's JFK.
Well,
that to me is just still a great freaking like.
I hate that movie.
Oh, yeah.
So, well, I mean, that movie, I have to credit it because it did move, like literally moved policy. The Congressional Records Act regarding the JFK assassination was in part motivated by the movie and how much buzz it got. But I think it's not a good one because of, I think it has some weird emphases on some of the characters.
For sure.
And I kind of can't watch it. I think Nixon is better.
Interesting. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Stone.
The other one I would say is like, it's kind of more sociopolitical than anything. Is still, at least for me, potentially my favorite movie ever is Do the Right Thing, or with Spike Lee's Do the Right Thing, just sort of like kind of race and class consciousness, and then also
9 to 5 has great
yeah,
politics.
100%, and then also honestly, Apocalypse Now for Vietnam is my other my favorite one.
I think one of the most important ones is 7 Days in May, 1964 movie about a coup of a president. It came out in 1964. Interestingly, it's by the director of Manchurian Candidate. JFK invited the director to the White House, actually, and there's some interesting conspiracy stuff around that. So I would recommend 1964, 7 Days in May.
And another one that Matt and I do talk about a decent amount, both on and off air, and I think actually might be the primo recommendation here, The Battle of Algiers.
Oh
yeah, everyone should see that. It's
okay.
Yeah.
All right, I have one more in terms of the documentary. This documentary came out my senior year of high school, and it's like one of the watching it was like a formative political moment for me. The House I Live In, which is about the war on drugs, it taught me to think a lot more critically about police and our government, and like what criminalization and laws are designed to do. I mean, I know that Ava DuVernay had another movie about the drug war that came out later, I think. 13. I thought this. I think The House I Live In is way better, so that I would recommend that to people.
Another documentary, The Act of Killing, incredible movie.
Oh, incredible
movie.
Yes. All right, I think we answered that pretty sufficiently. People are pointing out Bulworth if Sam were here. Yeah. Sorry, Ramona Frankenstein, Sorry to Bother You is very political and it slaps. Yes, I mean
that one's great.
Lakeith Stanfield, like one of our best actors, American actors. All right, so let's talk about the DNC. So Michelle Obama gave a speech that was like very widely praised and well received. I mean, her popularity within the Democratic Party is enormous, and she went on first. Then her husband Barack Obama came on, and her speech was really good. She here talks about, and I think alludes to, the birther conspiracy that Donald Trump was one of the key purveyors of when he was launching his political career. I mean, this, like, if not the guy.
I would say like I know people, my grandparents, were big Trump people in like 2008, 2009, because of the amount of emails this guy was using to saying like, this birth certificates thing, I don't know about this Obama guy.
Yep.
And then we need to, and also it was like, oh, he's a businessman too, so he can be real respectable. But he trafficked, absolutely, he kept that thing alive So much that it was a liability for Romney in 2012 to be seen like courting him because of how much of a birther Donald Trump was.
Right. And it was, I mean, like the subject of Republican memes. It was basically, I think, one of the major planks of the racist backlash against Obama's win in 2008 that also saw the Democrats lose 1,000 seats across the country in the 2010 midterms and like killing the rest of the Democrats' agenda for the rest of his presidency. So this was key to the intense racist backlash against Obama's election. And Trump peddled it, and it catapulted him to victory in 2016. So naturally, the Obamas have resentment about this conspiracy theory that Obama was secretly born in Kenya because it was just, it was just racism. And here Michelle Obama alludes to it. And what's just insane is that it seems like some Republicans on Fox News are trying to revive it.
For years, Donald Trump did everything in his power to try to make people fear us. See, his limited, narrow view of the world made him feel threatened by the existence of two hardworking, highly educated, successful people who happen to be black.
Trump also, I will say, peddled conspiracy theories about Michelle Obama being a man. That's another right-wing Facebook dad meme that this movement gave oxygen to. Just rank racism. And
and a lot of this stuff went under the radar because it actually wasn't Facebook but email chains, and which was a lot less visible but a lot more rancid.
Exactly. It's a great point. And you even see in recently the Imani Khalif controversy where a bunch of psychos like Elon Musk and J.K. Rowling, who are now thankfully maybe facing some legal liabilities.
Hit the delete button.
And J.K. Rowling just deleted a bunch of tweets. But this is but you can just see how people, women who are not white, even if they're cis women, are either are dehumanized or their femininity is called into question by right-wingers as a way to attack them in a racist manner, and how notions of gender and sexuality and race are all interconnected in who gets to be deemed a real woman and who isn't. So the Obamas dealt with a ton of this stuff from the Republican Party. And now Jesse Waters, who has fashioned his entire career basically on Bill O'Reilly, also who peddled the birther conspiracy theory, has decided now's the time to bring it back. Here he was on The Five yesterday.
Weird vibe going on. I can't figure it out. But I will tell you this, Greg. Barack Obama, still the godfather of this machine. He gave us Joe Biden as VP. He gave us Hillary as Secretary of State. Then he cooed Joe, put all his boys with Kamala's team, and had his wingman Holder vet Waltz. Now, the guy's a young 63. He's going to be doing this for the next 25 years. He's definitely going to interfere in this election. That's why we'll be sending Johnny to Hawaii to get the truth about the birth certificate. This time we will dig deep and find out what really happened.
Good point. You should tell Johnny that he needs to get a passport.
To go to Kenya. I agree.
Yes.
I agree.
No, I meant to Hawaii just to see him do it.
Yeah. Got it.
Ask him what the exchange rate is for the Hawaiian dollar. All right. Ahead.
Okay.
Did anyone notice Dana Perino's face? She they let him go off, obviously, because he's in the primetime slot, but they're very much like, oh my God, we have to be on screen while he does this. Because Waters loves to do the line towing thing of I'm joking. But then literally saying we need to send somebody to investigate whether Barack Obama was actually born in Hawaii.
Obama was forced, because of this insanity, to release his long-form birth certificate, which unequivocally showed that he was born in Hawaii. There was also a newspaper clipping at that time. That
From the day he was born. So the conspiracy would have to have not wanted to would have, in order to think like a birth certificate or anything would reveal the truth here, you would have to think that they wouldn't cover that part of the conspiracy, but they would make sure that the local newspaper pretends that a kid was born under that name in Hawaii
Yes.
on that day so they can later set him up to be president.
That his Kenyan father and his Kansas-born mother would have had to, in utero, decide both that they were going to be fraudulent about this and that their unborn child was the Manchurian candidate to bring Kenyan socialism. They would have to have made that decision and collaborated with the doctors, the hospital, the local newspaper to make that happen. That is called playing the long game.
It's as if Obama was like Millie Bobby Brown's character in Stranger Things.
Right.
Like a lab-grown, like superhuman, like designed to take over the world from day one of his existence.
And it's just difficult for them to fearmonger about this when this already happened. He was president for 2 terms and none of this came to fruition. So we're now going to go back in time and say, like, this is when Obama's going to be really scary. Not when he's most visible to you as the president of the United States, when he's now, a retired guy who's basically just doing Netflix documentary specials with his time instead of engaging in politics, an issue I have with the Obamas for example, although when they do engage, it's apparently trying to get Josh Shapiro to be the VP or whatever.
You know what? This Machiavellian operator that interferes in elections, Barack Obama. You know what would have been nice if he put somebody on the fucking Supreme Court when Scalia died.
Yes,
like that would have been great. Instead of all this like second order machinations as the judiciary gets stacked with more and more young Earth creationists and corporate lobbyists.
If they wanted to have a serious conversation about Obama's continued influence on the party, did they decide to litigate what happened in 2020 when all of a sudden all of the non-Biden candidates and non-Bernie candidates withdrew from the primary to coalesce around
He kind of mentioned that
Joe
though.
Biden? He did.
That's part
But
of
they
the
don't
Obama.
care.
Yeah, no, they
It's like when they say this is a coup, Kamala Harris being the nominee against Joe Biden, and you see the polling for Democrats, and it's like 80%, 90% of Democrats are satisfied or happy that Kamala Harris took over. Those are the people you're supposedly saying got screwed over, and they're basically saying, okay, we're happy with it. So what is the political salience of it?
Yeah, like, I mean, this is not, I think theoretically rigorous, but I think a good shorthand for whether something is a coup or a revolution is it popular?
But it's also interesting. It's also interesting that in the way of the 2020 primary, but also any of the angling of Vivek Ramaswamy even like 2 weeks ago was like, I think Michelle Obama is going to replace Harris at the convention,
right?
And that there's always every election cycle there's something about how like the Obama cabal is sort of going to influence things. I think the presumption is that it's always going to be like in a markedly, dramatically leftward shift. The 2020 angling was literally to not make it so that Bernie Sanders had enough juice to keep going. Like that was explicitly to keep the party in the center.
Right.
It is even the stuff that was actually sort of influenced by them. I think it borne out
to drag the party to the right.
It was literally the opposite way.
Yeah. Mama Philosophiles says they can grow Obama in a lab to take over the world, but they can't forge a birth certificate. Basically,
exactly. Like it's so funny. Like the things that that's always the way with these really dumb conspiracies. It's like if they could have, if they can plant something in the Hawaiian news, it's like maybe there's other things they could have done too,
right,
with maybe the government.
It reminds me of how like in Star Wars they they can go from planet to planet within a matter of minutes, but they don't have like a satellite system to detect when a ship is going to come down and attack them.
Our technology is so futuristic, but like we don't have like cell phones,
right?
Or like
Harry Potter,
walkie-talkies.
They can do like Harry Potter. They can transport from different locations, but they have to send owls to communicate with one another.
They need a flying car or like something, with the Weasleys and stuff.
You know why that happens in fiction? It's because it's called magical thinking. Republicans, engage in reality, please. Bean Queen. Everyone should watch the episode John Oliver just did about Hawaii. I haven't yet, but he's been doing a good work. I mean, he said that he alluded to the genocide accusations in his piece on the West Bank. So
I think John Oliver is pretty much good, except occasionally when certain State Department things get involved with maybe. Like, I'd be curious how he covered recent stuff in Venezuela, for instance.
that was a horrible segment from a few years ago. I'm hoping that maybe he learned a little bit of a lesson from that.
Yeah,
right?
which again is not to say that nothing wrong happened in Venezuela. I'm agnostic about all that, but that America is not the one to make it right.
Yes, that was a misstep. Much like, when Jon Stewart did that rally to restore sanity. Pretty bad.
That was simple naivety.
Yeah, well, there we go. Emmy from Mars says, Meet John Doe, 1941 by Frank Capra is one of the most important political films ever made. Capra intentionally put it in the public domain so future viewers would have access to it. Please check it out. I mean, Capra has a lot of, decent politics in his films. Like, It's a Wonderful Life is one of my favorite movies of all time. I know that's kind of a normie take, but that movie has...
I've been getting
great
into
politics about banks and greed and community.
Yeah, I've been getting into Verhoeven lately. I never saw a RoboCop or what's the Starship Troopers. Both are very funny and political movies.
Yeah, it's funny. Some of our greatest filmmakers have pretty weird politics, but there are some that have like really good ones. God, what was I thinking of the other day? Well, this is not worth me pontificating about it.
I wanted to go back to this. Quote, agnostic about the government in Venezuela disappearing more people than the Argentine dictatorship. That's a shitty take, Matt. No, I'm agnostic about claims about coups or not, because it is, in recent history has been fabricated. I don't think what the conditions in Venezuela are good. I don't think it's purely the government of Venezuela's fault. I think the Center for Economic and Policy Research is a good place to go start to look into what America has done to that country. For instance, like destroying their main export and causing a Great Depression. So for political reasons, that is called collective punishment, and it's going around elsewhere in the world. It'd be nice to condemn it everywhere it happens. I am I'm hands off Venezuela when it comes to the American State Department, because I do not think our intentions are good. I think Lula and AMLO, or now Sheinbaum, and other leaders of Latin America and South America are, and I think anybody suggesting America has a role to play that isn't malicious is lying to you or naive.
Dead Pirate Robin. Oh God, I need to have my hearing checked. I thought you said Bernie didn't have enough Jews to keep going. Juice. Bradley said. Juice.
Like orange juice.
And like,
excuse me.
Sorry, I'm still on this, but I don't to analyze the facts. I don't think the facts are clear. I think the facts about like a few years ago are clear, because Chris Murphy admitted that we tried to coup that to solve that situation. I think that was a mistake. So yeah, I am dealing with facts.
He did tweet that.
Bolton also said it.
Let's turn to the uncommitted movement. We're gonna have somebody on tomorrow who is an uncommitted delegate, so we'll be able to talk more about this. But I wanted to highlight this video as we see Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez begin to shift, honestly, her rhetoric in a way that I'm disappointed about. Months ago, she was on the House floor calling it a genocide. And then she did her convention speech as there were major protests outside. And she repeated the State Department Biden administration line about a ceasefire and hostages. That is not happening. It's now quite clear that Benjamin Netanyahu will not agree to a ceasefire, and it needs to be imposed upon them in the form of sanctioning Israel and doing an arms embargo. These are the things that are going to be necessary, because if the genocide stops, Netanyahu is both going to be under criminal prosecution, will be out of power, and the messianic freaks that are a part of his majority coalition government won't stop until they kill every Palestinian that they can, and also maybe attempt to spark a regional war to drag the United States into it. We're like, the amount of people that are dead in Gaza, we have no clue. A week or two ago, there was a letter written by American doctors working in Gaza that put that number over 90,000. There are other estimates that put it in the hundreds of thousands. They've killed all the journalists and the record keepers. So that's another part of why they aren't interested in ceasing fire, because war crimes investigations will happen and we'll know the true death toll.
If you're alive, but everyone you loved has been killed, or you are so emaciated that you'll never retain your full health again, like that doesn't count towards the conservative death tolls that we are talking about right now, which are on their own
devastating,
horrific.
Or your limbs are gone. I mean, the trauma that the people in Gaza will live with who survive for the rest of their lives.
We saw so many Zionists talk about decapitated babies. I just saw another retweeted it, another image of a kid's head splayed open because of a bombing.
A little boy, it seemed like, being held up by somebody. I've seen flesh of children that is so torn apart that it looks like putty. So with that said, these protests are righteous, they're necessary, and I'm encouraged to see Ilhan Omar, who I gotta say is probably my favorite member of Congress, because she both stands on her principles and plays the inside game as like the Progressive Caucus whip really well. She deserves more credit for her political shrewdness as well as her principles. And
her ability to win in Minnesota, which
right,
like the people always want to suggest like that's like a majority Somalian migrant
nope.
district. It is not. I would recommend looking into the demographics. If you
that is a single-digit minority in Minnesota, if I'm not mistaken. That's just.
It's a white supremacist Minnesomalia sort of
talking
trope.
point, and so I love that efficacy, and I made this point the other week, but Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman lost, and I hate that they lost, but in part because I think the members that staved off AIPAC from either not pouring a ton of resources in or staying away entirely, it was Summerlee, it was Ilhan Omar, it was Rashida Tlaib. They were all state representatives before they got into Congress. So they had this kind of like infrastructural support.
More of a machine.
Then, and Cori Bush just didn't have that. Jamal Bowman had the Democratic Party that was actively hostile to him in New York State. So these are things that we just should flag. And now that Ilhan Omar has survived her primary, she's still keeping up the good fight. This is what she had to say at the uncommitted rally outside of the Democratic National Convention just, about an hour ago.
Palestinians. It's been unconscionable for me in the last 10 months to witness my colleagues in this administration refusing to recognize the genocidal war that is taking place in Gaza, to not see the mothers who have lost countless children, the babies whose dead bodies are being dug out. Do not understand that working tirelessly for a ceasefire is really not a thing, and they should be ashamed of themselves for saying such. Palestinians.
Now.
Yes. And by the way, that is a split from Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and almost seems like, I don't know.
Direct reference.
A direct reference.
Which, I mean, I don't know. It's unclear to me, but just to say what she says there, calling for a ceasefire is not really a thing, and shame on the people who are doing so. Now, I'd be curious what she said directly after that, but if it's not a shot directly at AOC, it should be, because AOC did do that. That's what she did on the very first night of the election, as people who helped the DNC helped get her elected were protesting that, trying to get the more buy-in for the uncommitted movement, to get some movement on the embargo. If I guess aid is maybe where the split the baby thing, but yeah, I mean, good for Ilhan, and shame on AOC is right.
And I think, look, AOC seems to have larger ambitions, whether it's for Schumer's Senate seat in in 4 or 6 years, I forget exactly when, or
Yeah.
whether it's to primary Kathy Hochul for governor.
And I hope she beats both those people if she runs. But
She'd be better than both. But
if the price
right.
is you have to lie about a genocide and about a party's complicity in doing so, that we have to name that price. We have to be very clear about it. We need marketplace transparency when it comes to the cost of doing business in the Democratic Party here.
Yep. I think, continuing to reflexively repeat the State Department line of a ceasefire is doing a disservice to the tireless, uncommitted activists that are right outside your door.
Yeah.
And Ilhan Omar understands that. So
and there's
good for her.
People say, and I don't know if we want to play it, but Bernie talking about a ceasefire. It's good to say we demand a ceasefire, but it is massively insufficient because we need to be clear who the demand needs to be made to.
Biden is saying that. So
it's very easy because you know what he means when he says demand a ceasefire? We're going to demand it from Hamas and urge it from Israel. Well, actually, that's not the problem.
Yeah.
We need to impose
Mhm.
a ceasefire because we're the ones paying for the missiles and the bombs that are dropping. So this sort of it's a massive. I think and people don't like because people like AOC, and there's plenty of reasons to like AOC for what she represents in politics. This needs to be a price that she needs to pay a price for this, and I am very thankful that Ilhan said that because that is the page that people within earshot of this need to get. That's the page they need to get on because what AOC is doing is not for anybody else but AOC.
Davey Hellbender says, what legal power did Kamala or AOC have to do anything today? I want to just be clear about this. My expectations for AOC are very different than my expectations for Kamala Harris as the nominee of the Democratic Party. And I want Kamala Harris, I'm optimistic about her ability to be pushed. And that's what I've been saying in my commentary because she's not a reflexive anti-Palestinian racist like Biden, who has made it his life's mission, it seems to be, to me, to protect Israel from all consequences and scrutiny. Because I think it's in Kamala Harris's self-interest to change course. And so that's why she has to be pushed, and that's why I'm grateful for all of these activists. AOC is somebody who was supposed to be a representative for the left. And the support for ending arms to Israel within the Democratic Party is fairly overwhelming, and it's at the minimum a plurality position, but I think it's the majority position in a lot of polls. So
despite nobody speaking for it, which is crazy.
Right, and I expect a member of the squad who's on the left to at the very least be at the center of that position. And she didn't use the bully pulpit that she had at the DNC to do that.
She used it to defang the protests that were going on. That's what happened.
I think that's what the DNC wanted. She maybe didn't think that's what she was doing, but I think that
that's the function.
That may have been the function, which is really unfortunate because I've liked a lot of what AOC has done, and I will support her the hell out of her if she primaries any of these corporate Democrats. But I think it's a mistake, and I think she's made a few strategic mistakes, including propping up Biden's failing campaign when she could have been leveraging Kamala Harris during that time period when it was becoming clear that Biden would be forced to have to.
And maybe it's out of fear for what. But the problem is, somebody in the Hills, Alex Gagnitano, said, this is an issue that has split Democrats or divided, I think is the word, which is a funny word because you can divide something like 10-90 or you can divide it 50-50. But if you say divided, I think people tend to think like, oh, this is a 50-50 thing. No, Democrat voters want a stronger hand to be taken with regards to Israel. I mean, that was pretty much clear immediately after even October 7th in the last fall, but it has become even more so over the spring and now the summer. And so the division is between the people who want them, because I think if Harris came out and started signaling, say, hey, actually we are going to not allow any sort of offensive weapons on Israel or whatever sort of things short of an embargo that she says, I think she would benefit from it electorally. And then now it's just like, well, how strong is the Israel lobby if they load up entirely for Donald Trump? Who knows? I don't.
She just massively outraised him in July.
I'd be willing to take on that fight personally, but I'd also not be willing to lie about a genocide. So maybe I'm not the right person to ask.
You probably wouldn't be somebody in a position to run for president as the Democratic nominee. Yeah,
kind of hurting my dreams now. That's what I thought. I've been preparing for a political career by spending 3 hours on this show saying edgy things about politicians.
Yeah. Gosh, the oppo that we would have, we ran for office. I mean, that's part of why I would never wanted to. You know, it's just like just so much more fun to say exactly what I think.
Yeah, I mean, people say things like, here's Jimmy Patterson. AOC is popular. The fringe left holds no power over her. You guys couldn't save Bush or Bowman, LOL. It's funny to like engage in politics on such a like brain poisoned, nihilistic way. But Ilhan Omar won. Bowman was, we can't save people from a whole bunch of rich people being put in their district and poor people being taken out of it. It's generally going to be difficult. But yeah, the truth is the deck is stacked against people who maybe want to speak out against Israel, for instance. But yeah, it's an uphill battle that we take on. Good luck. Enjoy being on the winning side or something.
Well, it's silly because it's funny to accuse us of not being strategic when, like, I don't know, I'm going pretty hard for saying that Harris is our best chance to change policy on this front. So whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
Number 13, Omar also isn't on the main stage of the DNC saying this stuff. So there's that. For reasons I can't completely understand, acknowledging the genocide just won't get you power right now. And if you don't have power, how can you affect change anyway, even for the better? It's a bit of a riddle, but it's the reality. I'm starting to think we might just have to provide the power to who we can believe can help first and push them rather than opposing them for what's objectively worse. Is the objective making things better or creating a zero-sum game? Well, the question inherent there is like, is the DNC speaking slot worth it if you're not going to acknowledge the protests outside to gain that recognition? I don't think AOC needed like a 2004 Obama speech to catapult her into the national attention. She has a lot of it. So it's a question of like, what do you do with that platform? And I wish she did something different. But I don't really want to relitigate this because I just feel like our opinions on this are quite clear. Let's have some fun with this. So Steven Crowder is quite upset right now that crime is down. Violent crime, all forms of crime for the most part, are trending downwards in this country. And this is difficult because the Trump campaign has tried to make this a part of their strategy. There's a really funny piece. Let's actually just turn to this before we get to Crowder in the Detroit News, because apparently Trump backed out of an interview with them after the numbers on crime were pointed out to him. We'll just read here. National violent crime data from the FBI showed the rate of violent crime decreased from 2017 to 2019 during the Trump administration before jumping in 2020 to 398.5 incidents per 100,000 people in 2021 and 2022, the first 2 years of President Joe Biden's administration. The nation's violent crime rate dropped, hitting 380.7 in 2022, according to FBI data. Do we have this up on the screen here? Because I'm going to read this part. However, the Trump campaign said Tuesday the federal data was, quote, totally unreliable at the present time because the FBI arrived at the statistics by using, quote, estimated crime numbers for law enforcement agencies that didn't report numbers. Okay, fact check here. The overwhelming majority of these precincts have reported numbers. There are a few that haven't done so, but it would mean a dramatic statistical shift. Like, you would have to have all the so much crime concentrated in these specific areas for it to change this downward trend. Because as you see, it spiked in 2020 when we were in the midst of a pandemic, a once in a lifetime shocking event where people were in economically precarious situations, and also everybody's mental health was quite difficult. Now crime is on the decline. But Trump, in hearing about this, if we could scroll down here a little bit, Bradley. The Trump campaign had initially agreed that Trump would participate in an interview with the Detroit News on Tuesday, but after the newspaper began asking about the Michigan crime data before the event, a campaign aide and the presidential candidate no longer had time for an interview after the speech. So it was pointed out to him specifically that in Michigan, because they're always talking about Detroit and Chicago, whatever, that in Michigan, crime had gone down, and like the little baby that he is, Trump couldn't deal with the facts of that situation, and he withdrew from the interview with this local paper. Good luck with that when you need to win Michigan, buddy. With that said, Steven Crowder is also having a hard time dealing with this news about their entire narrative about violent crime and, the fact that their YouTube algorithms of black people fighting in different areas, or these extremely exploitative montages of homeless encampments in various cities, that's not reflective of nationwide trends and is just there to reinforce their biases and fears. Here's Crowder.
Here's what Donald Trump said on the interview.
Right? What he's done with crime, with cashless bail, where you kill somebody. I mean, we have states there you kill somebody and they let you out right away. I mean, you don't have to even put up, and then they never find the people unless they kill again, and then they let them out again. Our country is becoming a very dangerous place.
Can we pause that for a sec? Okay, so Trump is claiming there that Biden instituted a nationwide cashless bail policy. That never, ever, 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 ever came close to happening. It was never proposed. It was never talked about. Of all the Democrats I could think of that are alive and in a position to ever be president, Biden might be the least likely to institute such a program. Yeah. It's insane and untrue.
I would just say, the cashless bail thing has gotten a lot of very stupid people tripped up. The idea that if you change to cashless bail, now all of a sudden we're going from cashless bail to just a typical bail situation. The person who decides whether that person is allowed to get on bail is a judge. The difference should not be whether that person can pay or not. That is a elitist, classist policy that just locks up people into Rikers. All the people that have problems with cash bail have no solution to what to do about Rikers or pretrial detention. They are blowhards passing off a conservative agenda. So the issue here is the judges. Anytime someone's oh, that person would have been locked up if not for cash bail, a judge decided to let them out.
Yeah,
that's the judge's issue, and the cash it will happen
bail,
sometimes.
And the cash bail reforms largely in these states throughout. I mean, I haven't seen ones as it relates to violent offenders. That's a lot of misinformation that's being peddled. I mean, specifically repeat ones. There are many instances of poor people, particularly people of color, being locked up because they can't afford bail, sometimes for crimes that they didn't even commit. People should Google Khalif Browder.
Because what's happened? Okay,
no, I just want to point out, Khalif Browder was held at Rikers Island for the jail there. He was accused of stealing a backpack. It didn't end up being true, but he was held in solitary confinement for years and eventually killed himself. He was a teenager at the time. Okay? So this is the kind of thing that cashless bail and these kinds of reforms are meant to stop, because we already prison the most people in the world.
Raw and percentage-wise.
And it's not because all these scary dudes are here in the United States. It's because we have a system of incarceration that is inherently exploitative and needs reform. But even with all that said, with all of these things that they're saying progressive DAs are doing, and that, Trump is claiming Biden is doing, violent crime since 2020, when there was a spike, and 2021, there was a carryover, has been dropping precipitously.
Yep. And we can talk about why it rose in a second here, but we can get back to Stephen.
Yeah.
Our country is becoming a very dangerous place.
Okay. Now, everything he just said is correct.
I did not know that.
Here's the CNN claim that both violent crime and property crime have actually dropped significantly in the years 2023 and the first quarter of 2024. Here's the truth. It doesn't matter. It's far above pre-COVID levels in major cities, even accounting for the new misreporting. So from 2019 to 2023, if we're looking at that number, murder up 18%, assaults with a firearm up 32%. Auto theft, up 105%. Even with the funding.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's all down because it's still up because of 2019. Well, what's happened since then is the coronavirus pandemic, which massively upset the entire world, including American society, which caused, a spike, and including these knock-on effects, say like massive inflation in housing prices, which causes more and more people to be in housing, which, by the way, isn't good for crime when people are in that level of desperation. So there's a explanation for this that's besides the nasty Democrats got into power, because guess what? That rise, Stephen, started when your boy was in office.
Right, exactly. Keep going. Oh, that's it?
That's it. It's just him saying it doesn't matter.
Oh, it doesn't. That's all he provided?
He just then is like, he just gets mad. He kind of sort of just grouses about CNN fact checking and the whole fact checking industry, so to speak. It's not very substantive.
He said it doesn't matter that it's returning. Article, because it's not CNN claiming this. They're using the FBI's statistics, okay? And I'm sorry, if you think that the FBI is going to downplay crime, you should read like one history book, because the FBI, they're cops. There's no incentive for them to downplay crime, because when crime is up, they get more funding, they get more resources, they get to fearmonger and do what they want. Yeah. They get to like have the reins let loose for them to be able to crack down on, like, say, I don't know, civil rights activists or something, for example. But
you would need to be the greatest institutional leader of all time if you were going to lead the FBI and help them take down the Republican Party.
Yes. Violent crime is down and the U.S. murder rate is plunging, FBI statistics show. This is from June. Violent crime dropped by more than 15% in the United States during the first 3 months of 2020, according to statistics released Monday. Again, this was in June by the FBI. The new numbers show violent crime from January to March dropped 15.2%, compared to that same period in 2023, while murders fell 26.4% and reported rapes decreased by 25.7%. Aggravated assaults decreased during that period when compared to last year by 12.5%, according to data, while robberies fell 17.8%. I mean, these are double-digit decreases across the board. And okay, so you see there, the numbers that are released are gathered from 13,719 of just over 19,000 law enforcement agencies across the country. I'm going to do some quick math over here just to see 13,719 divided by 1,900 or 19,000. So that's 72%. That's 72% of the law enforcement agencies. Now, it would the rest of that percentage, the 37% that are left, you would have to have all of those statistical anomalies concentrated in those unreported precincts to change that trend.
Well, all of those precincts they haven't reported because they're under a John Carpenter assault on precinct 13 style situation, and they're fighting off the murder gangs as we speak.
I forgot, right. That is, when everything's a conspiracy, it's probably easier for you to believe that kind of nonsense. So apparently facts don't care about Crowder's feelings.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. I want it to be the case. My algorithm says it's the case.
It doesn't matter that it's returning to look, America does have, and I don't know if we have it, but Buttigieg got into it with a Fox News guy over violent crime. He's like, what about, Chicago has had such violent crime? And Buttigieg says, like, well, there's other cities led by Democrats that don't. Why don't you look at, like, say, all of the violence that happens in rural Missouri, which is actually even greater than some of the urban areas they like to fearmonger about. People get shot in the South way too goddamn much because of the gun lobby and that sort of stuff. So, here's Buttigieg. I don't know if you want to play this, but
yeah, let's see. Let's read some IMs. We have so much I wanted to get to. Central Asian Democracy says, Lakeith Stanfield, one of our best American actors, is an insane take, one-dimensional, though he's great at that dimension, I guess. First of all, I meant to say one of our best young American actors, but because there's a lot of British actors that are doing American accents, and I'm appreciative that Lakeith Stanfield is from the United States. Second, because sometimes when British actors do American accents, they either they do the grovelly thing, and I just hate that. So whatever. I think, first of all, there are a lot of actors that are one-dimensional. George Clooney, you could say, is one-dimensional, but they do that dimension very well. And I would say watch Short Term 12. Sorry to Bother You is very good. Judas and the Black Messiah, he's not one-dimensional.
Yeah, I also don't agree even with some of the other stuff
Get
he's
Out!
done. Yeah, I was gonna say he's really great in Get Out, and also he's really great in Atlanta, which are two roles that are quite different, and also across TV and film. So I also the ones you've mentioned, Emma, I also do not think are that particularly similar to each other.
How dare you?
Yeah, I disagree. Hard disagree.
Yep. Vegetable sauce. Why is Trump slurring again? That was that weird Elon interview. Zero Summer. I thought AOC support for Biden was strictly strategic so that the push to replace him wouldn't be seen as coming from the progressive left. Well, I thought that initially too, but
I think that's one decent silver lining about it.
Yes.
Because I think this would be there's not a lot of courage, and I think if the narrative that Kamala was installed by the squad, I don't like their ability to maybe deal with that now. So I think it's better that it wasn't. But I genuinely think Bernie and AOC did see Wall Street and stuff influence, and they were trying in their own way, detached from the outside, to get ahead of that. I don't think it worked, frankly.
Minadishu says, did you see this Clinton pollster named Jeff Garin? He was in the Biden campaign and advised Harris to stop saying we're not going back because it's not forward looking, and stop calling them weird because it's too negative. Yeah, no, those folks are idiots. They were the same people telling her to pick Shapiro, by the way, and she didn't listen. So that's a good development.
I mean, I kind of see the thing about we're not going back. I wouldn't charge the Democrats $90,000 to come up with that. Hey, maybe have a forward-looking thing, because I don't know if people remember what going back to. Like, COVID was a long time ago.
Yeah.
But as far as the weird thing, I could not disagree more with that.
It's insane. It's completely wrong. Radical package. One thing I've noticed about some online lefties lately is they kind of don't see the value in uplifting people. Watching Obama's speech last night, I was reminded how even though he was a disappointment as president, he makes people feel good about what the country can be, and I think there's value in that, and lefties could learn to adopt some of that rather than scoffing at it if we really want to build coalitions. I actually, first, I think the online lefties thing might be a little overblown, but at least for my purposes, I think I agree. I think I find I enjoy elections in the sense that I actually get excited about people getting excited about democracy, right? And I do think there is value in that. And building a broader tent is acknowledging that people are excited, I think, to vote for Kamala Harris, and that in and of itself, there's beauty in that, because it's about moving the country forward to a degree. It's about rejecting Trump. It's about rejecting fascism. So for me at least, I think that you can have that that view and then still and have that view within the context of an election, but then also when it's time to push as hard as you can for for better policy sets and for a better better platform to a degree. So I'm trying to strike that balance myself.
It's hard for me as somebody who I was a freshman when Obama was elected president, and I've seen this, and it's fine. I think it has limited utility. Donald Trump won the first election after Obama was president for 2 terms. That is a reality that, nice speeches can't paper over. That said, I think AOC and Bernie's speech with the qualifications, I don't think even Bernie, and even Warnock, I think we have a very, very low-ass bar for this stuff. In the midst of absolute horrors that I think people are still I'd love to be joyous about the farmer labor guy and the VP ticket too. It's not possible for me to fully do that. As politicians, yeah, they have to, and I think they to some extent succeeded. As far as the online leftists or people out in the streets, I think they're more righteous, and they're moving the ball forward more on these issues than the people who in some instances helped achieve their place in power on the same movements. So I think you can maybe celebrate what's good about standard Democrat, appeal to civic virtue and stuff like that, while also not criticizing the people who are trying to keep the important things in focus.
I think that's true. Okay, maybe we'll save Bill Maher for what do you guys? What would you guys?
That's evergreen.
That's it. We'll do that tomorrow with Brandon and Binder. I think they might find. Oh yeah. Let's do this Theo Von thing. Okay, so, they say that you should engage with your child's interests, like to build self-confidence. Say your son is taking to theater. Why don't you ask him, like, how was rehearsal today? Or your daughter is on the soccer team. You could ask her, like, how was practice, and go to her games. I mean, this is just good parenting, right? And so that's why I get sad when I see Trump engaging in Don Jr.'s interests with somebody who's not him, like on camera in full display, when I just don't think, Trump could have asked him, what does it feel like, hypothetically, to be on a lot of cocaine? He doesn't engage with his kids in that way. It must be hard for Don Jr. to see this.
The big problem we have is, fentanyl is probably the biggest. Opioid is bad. Opioid is bad too.
Yeah.
I think that's bad because everyone thinks, in many cases, they think they're going to do away with pain. And literally the time is so short. If you take it for like 2 weeks, you're almost addicted to it. It's incredible when you.
Oh, well, all of that is horrible. But
how
why do we allow that?
How did you get addicted? How did?
No, I would just do cocaine. That was really, yeah. So not just, yeah.
That's down and dirty, right?
Yeah, and it was, yeah.
But you don't anymore?
No, I don't do it anymore, man, and I'm not doing it.
Is it too much? Too much to handle?
Some of the stuff started to get a real rattle in it, too. I don't know where we were even getting it from in this country, but yeah, it started to make me feel like I was a mechanic or something.
So the thing you go back to then is alcohol for the most part.
Right, yeah, but what I want probably is cocaine, but I know that if I have a drink, then it'll be like, okay, well, I had a drink, then I can do this.
Is cocaine a stronger
oh, yeah.
up?
Yeah.
Cocaine so you're way up with cocaine more than anything else you can think of.
Cocaine will turn you into a damn owl, homie. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You'll be out on your own porch, and you'll be your own street lamp. You're freaking.
And is that a good feeling? Well,
no,
it's a miserable feeling.
But you do it anyway, just like the guy you're saying with the scotch. Like you knew it was bad, but you still.
So it's not even good during what would be normally the good time. In other words, oh wow. So why would you do it?
I wouldn't. That's why I don't.
Yeah, that's terrible.
But it's crazy because that's what alcoholism is. I think it's that it trumps the why.
All right, yeah. This is just fluff. Happy Theo's clean. I'm just joking about that coke stuff, but it is.
Is it really down and dirty like that?
First of all, I have an observation and a question. One is Trump loves this dude, like guys like this, and like Jake Paul. Jake Paul's a right winger. Theo's, we play this clip with Bernie. He seems more kind of just open-minded or whatever. Although I know he'd had some bad positions in the past, but seems like just like a nice guy, comedian, podcaster, or whatever. Trump likes these guys, asks inquisitive questions, has a good time with Jake Paul, but he can't with his own kids. He hates them.
The two times I've ever seen him smile or be engaged in a conversation, I mean singular a conversation, is this video and the Jake Paul TikTok where they're pretending to face off against one another.
He genuinely laughs and
I have
him.
Literally never seen him smile like that. I've never seen him listen to somebody.
Exactly.
Actually listen to what someone is actually saying directly to his face.
Okay, my second observation is the denture situation's back in this clip, which I didn't notice before.
Yep.
And then my third observation, or my question is, do we think Trump's never done drugs?
I still maintain that I don't think he has.
Doctors, I think, it depends. He's not taking anything illicit.
That's the thing, Matt. He's not.
Okay, but illicit, because I saw people were saying, oh, come on, he's pretending not to know what cocaine feels like. He was rich in the 80s. He's weird enough not to.
He has weird thoughts on like his body and what his body is capable of.
I think he lost a brother.
Oh, he lost.
And he lost his brother to alcoholism,
Yeah.
which I think is also in
That's
the
what they're
early
talking
80s.
about.
In the early 80s, which also I think informed like him not using substances.
No, I believe he doesn't take substances like that.
Remember the story about how he said, so he eats just like crap and he probably does prescription drugs, but he doesn't drink, and he maybe never tried cocaine, which I kind of believe because he has that view about like
The way he reacted here, like that's low down dirty. He has an elitist disdain for it.
I know. Well, I mean, he should talk to his kid, but like it's just he had that story about exercising. Do you remember that?
He said that his family's belief was always like the body is a battery with finite energy,
and when you exercise, you get
You're
rid of
losing
energy.
it. Yeah.
Yes.
And,
yeah.
And another point, Emma, we were talking about before the show is notably he was like a disciple of this guy. I think his name is Norman Vincent Peale, who correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows this guy, who I think authored the original book, The Power of Positive Thinking. And he is like a disciple of this guy. This guy officiated one of his weddings.
Right.
And so I think he has this sort of thing where it's like he has strangely like almost new age feelings about like not doing certain things to your body because it will like taint you, yet he also will like, you know, pose in front of the college football championship spread of McDonald's that he got for everybody, and he enjoys
weird.
that. Like,
it's so bizarre.
If you read about how insane his dad was, some of this stuff kind of comes into place.
Wow, he didn't have a stable parent to look up to. That's
I think
shocking.
a Nazi dad.
The one who was arrested. The one who was arrested at a Nazi rally in New York.
that guy.
That was covered in the New York Times.
I just when you feel like you can't learn anything new about this totally like oversaturated person in our lives. There he goes, genuinely interested in Theo Von's story about his struggles with addiction.
Does it take you up? Is it a good up?
It's so weird.
Yeah, he doesn't.
And like showing him like genuine interest is bizarre. Okay, let's end here. Let's do this Byron Donalds thing. So, not sure if folks heard about this horrible controversy of promoting anti-white racism out of the Kamala Harris campaign. In their promotional video announcing Tim Walz as the VP pick, Kamala Harris and him were talking about tacos, and Tim Walz made a joke about white guy tacos, and then Kamala Harris answered, "Trigger warning. What is that? Tuna fish and mayonnaise?" And then Tim Walz said, "Ground beef and cheese." And
that was cultural genocide.
And the entire foundation of Western civilization almost crumbled beneath us.
Did you know we actually conquered nations for their spices specifically?
Yes. Ben Shapiro.
That was to sell them, Ben. It wasn't because we loved the taste of them so much. It was because of the market possibilities of it. Really.
Yes.
Like, well, we got to get these spices.
By this logic, the public in the early 19th century was also super into sugar cane. You know,
Right.
like eating that.
Right. It's just about the consumption, apparently. So that was some stupid controversy on in right-wing circles, and it's, you know, interesting because they're having a hard time finding something that sticks against Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. But maybe Byron Donalds, representative from Florida, who Trump had on his VP shortlist to, you know, check a few boxes before he went with the white guy who could provide him with the Peter Thiel money, which ended up being a disaster, J.D. Vance. Byron Donalds here has a fact check on this white guy taco thing.
Critical things like our border situations, obviously our economy, inflation, foreign policy, those are the major issues facing our nation. And you've heard very clearly from President Trump and from Senator Vance about their vision to help our country. At the same time, you've heard nothing from Vice President Harris. You've heard nothing from Governor Walz. They interviewed each other. That was pretty cute, Brian. Actually, they had a little interview. That was cool. You know, white guy tacos. I guess that's a thing. Except that Tim Walz even lied about that because he won Al Franken's cook-off for tacos, actually making good ones with green chilies. The point of it all is that we have to be transparent.
Wait, what? What was the last word you said? With what?
With green
with green chilies.
Yes, Al Franken's Cook-Off. He made good tacos to win a prize at Al Franken's Cookout with green chilies.
The
Spicy!
The soul of
What?
America has been restored. Byron Donalds has done the digging, and he found the recipe from Al Franken's Cook-Off. Tim Walz is done. This is all a charade.
He's ruined.
And they've revealed that he's being disingenuous about the white guy tacos, that in fact he likes spice. Why would he engage in such vicious stereotypes when he's previously used chilies in his tacos?
Look, we gotta
If
get the
not,
facts here.
We have to get the fact. But he's shown that he was disingenuous about the white guy tacos thing. So what does that mean for the rest of America now?
Can we replace him before he speaks tonight?
1 can diced mild green chilies.
Mild
is literally what the recipe is. And Jack Posobiec, that Nazi naval intelligence asset that pretended to be an independent media person, my opinion, posted like the screenshot of the chili powder, the onion powder, and the garlic powder. And again, like, I am a white guy from the Midwest, can't really handle a lot of spice. I can handle garlic powder.
Right.
Oh, it's burning my eyes. The garlic powder.
Gosh, I'm just so glad that he figured this out before, through that campaign video, they were going to trick us all into thinking that they didn't want to erase white identity from America. He figured it out there. I mean, honestly.
Next thing, it's the camps.
First we have the stolen valor from Tim Walz, where he's, lying about, well, not really, it's a joke, but the stolen valor from Tim Walz.
Because
Serving
he didn't
only
stay extra long to go over to fucking Iraq as a National Guardsman.
Yes.
After 24 years.
Only serving in the Army National Guard for 24 years. How pathetic. We have that, and now we have the stolen white guy valor. In fact, it's the stolen spice guy valor here.
It's stolen valor. It's stolen valor, and the N has an enye. And has a little swiggle on the top.
Stolen
valor.
I'm not going to attempt it.
Don't think you can do the enye at the end of a word, but anyway.
Yeah, Bradley, you need to go back to Spanish class.
Also with no vowel afterwards. It's just a consonant.
I wouldn't know any of this because I, like an idiot, took Latin in high school, and I haven't retained any of it. But that was, what would you say?
What was that movie with Tom Hanks? Where he's like uncovering the Vatican secret.
Oh
yeah, Da Vinci Code.
Yeah,
Go to Angels and
Latin?
Demons. Yeah.
Honestly, you will not be shocked to know I loved that book as a kid. Loved the Da Vinci Code. Oh, was it? Oh, wait.
What? I said not surprised.
Oh, I think you said Nazi something.
Oh, no. As far as I know.
Okay.
What this reminds me of too, this Donald's clip with also the one with Laura Ingraham being like, he wasn't a coach, he was an assistant coach. Is like,
Right.
it's kind of hilarious that like some of these attack lines are like, they almost still have to concede that like it's still something that's like kind of like okay and cool. As in like, oh, so like the attack line here is like he actually made like aesthetically and gastronomically pleasing tacos.
Gastronomically.
and also used spice in them like a normal person, like
Yeah.
use mild like that's it.
Well, because he was lying about the white guy tacos thing. First it's stolen military valor, then it's stolen coach valor by not calling himself assistant coach Walz, and now we have stolen taco valor.
And Donald's is delivering this with the seriousness of like a pallbearer.
I know.
Like he's like with green chilies.
With great sadness and somberness
Yes, it is with a
and
solemn
love for
heart.
my country, I must announce to you that in fact, in the Al Franken cook-off, Tim Walz used chilies and, dare I say, garlic powder.
It's like the Louise Mensch tweet. She's like, I take no pleasure in announcing.
He was defensive coordinator for the state championship team. I'm sorry, that is a championship-winning football coach.
But
so
was he the head coach?
It talks about the DUI, but in 1996, Walz moved to Mankato, Minnesota, also home of the largest execution of Sioux or Dakota Native Americans back in the Civil War. In 1996, Walz moved to Mankato, Minnesota, where he was hired at Mankato West High School to teach social studies and began working with the football team, first as linebackers coach, then as defensive coordinator. Look at him working his way up just like he did in the military. The team started its 1999 season by losing 4 of its first 6 games before winning 8 in a row and defeating Cambridge Asante High School in Class 4A state championship. The Post reported on impassioned speeches that a player recalled Walz giving it in the playoffs. That is coaching. Like, I don't know what you.
You're right.
Yes. Yes.
It betrays an actual fundamental lack of knowledge of something that they almost feel as if they can corner, which is like sports
Football?
and like masculinity and athleticism. Being like, he wasn't a coach, he was an assistant coach. It's like, okay, I very clearly know that you, Laura Ingraham, both A, don't watch football or are familiar with the sport, and B, don't know anyone who
or thinks her
watches
audience doesn't
football.
care.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's interesting, and that we're bringing this back to, I think, a place of seriousness. But I will say, Tim Walz and Doug Emhoff in his speech last night showing love for his wife, who is running to be president, and would be first gentleman. I think I mistakenly called him first gentleman. He's second gentleman now. He'd be first gentleman. It's like a display of healthy masculinity and non-toxic masculinity that is really threatening to Trump and Vance. Like, between Donald Trump, who was found liable for sexual abuse and has had dozens of accusations against him, and JD Vance, who wants to police your uterus and determine how you can construct your family in like this religious theocratic way. The fact that like that is the example of masculinity in the Democratic Party and the Republicans are being branded as weird is a good thing, because there is such a thing as positive masculinity, and despite what like these incel streamers and what the Republican Party wants to tell you right now.
The AP NORC poll that came out about Walz and Vance today basically did acknowledge that they're sort of still somewhat anonymous to the general electorate, which makes sense. I mean, it's been only a month and a half or so for both of them, I think. But what it did say, which is interesting, one of these focus groups or push polls or whatever it was, is that the people who did recognize Walz like equated him with these terms, like father, coach, veteran. And so what that also, I think, proves to you is that even though the salience, I think, is still
White
increasing.
genocide.
Yeah, as taco trader is the fact that for the people who are becoming aware, or at least have the exposure to Walz, the stuff that the Democrats are framing him as and putting him in that framework, that's sticking to people.
Mm-hmm.
None of this stuff as of yet has had any sort of staying power.
I can't
as a
imagine
criticism.
why.
Like it's because exactly. It's so flimsy and it's so frivolous that it almost like it makes you wonder. It makes me feel as if Byron Donalds is like doing Jesse Waters. Like, is this more serious than a Jesse Waters like promo being like, we're sending Jimmy to Hawaii to figure out where Obama's birth certificate is? And he's saying, yeah, green chilies were used in the tacos at Al Franken's cook-off in Minneapolis.
Yeah, this is called kitchen table issues, because sometimes tacos are on your kitchen table.
Yes.
Trump has responded to Barack Hussein Obama's character assassination of him last night.
Oh, he has. He's responded.
He's addressing it. Is
he going to whip it out?
He's disappointed. I mean, I haven't watched this clip yet. I don't think
something
so.
about
if he does,
my
ACYN does not give us a trigger warning, which I would appreciate.
It's newsworthy if he does it.
Did you see Barack Hussein Obama last night? Take little shots. He was taking shots at your president. And so was Michelle. You know, they always say, sir, please stick to policy. Don't get personal. And yet they're getting personal all night long, these people. Do I still have to stick to policy?
Oh, Donald Trump says you're being very uncivil. And he
Stick
says
to policy.
They're taking shots at me behind bulletproof glass.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
Yeah.
He is so pissed that happened while his advisors are telling him, talk about the economy. He's like, they're being so nasty and I'm supposed to stay here talking about job creation? Like, are you kidding me?
You started this with the whole thing with, was it Little Marco? Was that who he referred to? Yes.
Exactly, yeah.
He went
on the debate stage about the penis size.
And then
yes.
it was that Little Marco was implied, and then also the hand size. My hands are
yes,
very big.
and you know what that means.
And you know, right?
Yeah.
Bro, you are literally, I think, the first presidential candidate. In fact, on the Mount Rushmore of presidential candidates who have brought up their penis size, you are the founding father. You are the George Washington of American presidents discussing penis size. Okay, so I mean, I want Donald Trump to clutch his pearls all the way through November. Please, please talk about how the Democrats are being so unfair to you. It really is amazing. He is doing Hillary 2016, complaining about the rules, complaining about the Democrats being mean, not going to the swing states, not having the crowd size advantage. I mean, what a little loser.
They're being deplorable to JD.
Right.
Don't like it.
And Emma, I think you made this point earlier too. It's also somewhat like DeSantis-esque, both in his presidential campaign, but also like his gubernatorial run against Gillum.
The overly online thing?
Like, overly online, but also like over in the sense of of course, who's Trump been talking to recently. Interviewing with Elon Musk on Twitter Spaces,
Just like
getting
DeSantis.
an assassination themed cyber truck from Aiden Ross, talking to Theo Von, talking to Jake Paul, like going to that crypto conference, the sneaker con, like just all of this like insular
Edgelord,
community, micro communities to get their money and support, and then also trying to work the reps by being like, you want me to talk about the economy? They're being very nasty to me. I have to respond. Like, please let me out of my cage. My bulletproof glass.
God, we're getting a lot of really funny IMs. We'll read some and then we'll get out of here. Snark Northie, the Mount Rushmore of penis size would actually be Scottsbluff, Nebraska, which I'm assuming is a very flat area.
Have to look at that.
A newsworthy whipout says, a newsworthy whipout. Trump acts like Eric Cartman when he gets all pouty. He really does. Mama Philistopheles, show us the penis certificate, Donald. Yes. Pull out the ruler. Frauder 12, this guy's just being charming and self-deprecating. He's actually very talented. #1 Republican burn. Desert Lefty, Republican pundits are humorless and believe in nothing. They therefore seem to be having an allergic reaction to seeing humor and beliefs in an opponent. Train Boy, LBJ is the king of presidents, talking about penis size, not Donnie. I guess I didn't know enough about that.
Yeah, famously, he has a LBJ tape with his tailor, where he says, you gotta let the nuts hang. So you can YouTube that.
Oh gosh. Okay. Sam from Ottawa. Emma is woefully ignorant of Big Jumbo if she thinks Trump was the first to talk about his penis size. I am apparently ignorant of this. I should have consulted with my presidential scholar.
You should have had a period where you were unemployed and going kind of insane and listening to the JFK, LBJ, and Nixon tapes in chronological order.
I should have. I should have had that time period. Drill says current data compared to the first half of 2019: homicide down 2%, robbery down 15%, residential burglary down 39%, domestic violence down 8%. However, motor vehicle theft and carjacking are both up 65%, shoplifting 10%. Overall, most numbers are down even compared to 2019. Yeah, but they compare 2019 because they want to wrap 2020 into it.
They want to include that because it's the Democrats and not just like a giant societal sort of disruption and then failure to really address it for the people most impacted by it.
Right. Meg MCA, Trump and his father bullied his brother into alcoholism. His brother was a pilot, and Trump and their father called him a bus driver and made his life miserable. Oh, I would not be shocked.
Yep. Seems about right.
Weirdo John, I love Capra films too, but it is the writers of the films, not Capra, who are injecting progressive ideals into them. Capra was a conservative Republican who disliked FDR. Oh, I didn't know that. Was an alleged informant for McCarthy in the 1940s and made 7 war propaganda films for the U.S. Department of War, one of which won an Oscar. He did become a pacifist later in life. Okay, this is how I learn. Gia of York. Also, I really think AOC sticking with Biden and the weird stream was mostly what she felt she could do to avoid a completely replaced ticket that was apparently being pushed for. I think it is actually paid off considering she's at the DNC, even though she didn't fully take advantage of that. And Harris
didn't take advantage at all. They took advantage of her. It'd be nice. The bear hugging Biden thing would have been good if she then said, actually, we need to start conditioning aid immediately. But instead, she's covering for him.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think the good things in that. I don't think the DNC sweats that when they got the insurgent Democrat, AOC herself, to come and say that the administration is working tirelessly for a ceasefire.
Blind Anti-Imperialism says, do we know if Blinken is staying on for a Harris administration? Would he or anyone else likely hold back an ability for a ceasefire even if Harris fights for one? I will eat a hat on air if Harris retains.
But you're right.
What?
I think you're right, but I wouldn't make that promise.
But when has any president kept the previous, even if there was it was the same party, when have they kept the previous Secretary of State since did LBJ in his second run? Or in like his actual election, did he retain?
I can't remember.
Yeah, I mean,
you're right, and I think the indication is like the West exec crew is on the outs, which is one. Now, whether they'll be replaced by some people noticeably better, I think that's the hope.
That's the hope, but I'm not making that promise. But Blinken in particular, she could get somebody who has identical politics but doesn't politically have the stink of this genocide on them. I mean, like, that's just basic.
It hasn't completely blown their credibility.
She would show complete political incompetence if that were the case, and thus far that's not what she's displayed. So I just have I really doubt that. All right, 3 more and then we will get out of here. It just goes to, I say this as someone who wishes we cut off Israel altogether. The reality is Israel has support in both parties when things actually come to a vote versus some speech. I mean,
but
we've
like
got
within the
pressure.
parties, within decision makers, yes. Within the voters of the Democratic Party, there's a huge problem, and I have no desire to lessen that problem. I think that problem should be agitated so that Biden stops the goddamn genocide and people can have the joy about this campaign that they really want to.
Yeah. Who is you? Carjacking being up is likely a result of the Kia security faults that allow for people to easily steal that vehicles. I have a coworker get their Kia stolen twice in the last 2 months.
Yeah, a big industry failure there.
Mama Philistopheles says, according to Axios, Trump may have violated the Logan Act with Netanyahu. Yep, I saw their PBS also had something on their coverage last night. We just didn't get to it today. And we'll just say the final IM of the day. Squirt Cobain, there's Wall Street Journal reporting from a month ago that says Harris wanted to get rid of Blinken, Austin, and Sullivan. Yep, I saw that. But as we're saying, things can change. And it's not customary, especially with an administration this unpopular, for her to retain these people. It would be insane for her to do so. And just from a self-interest standpoint, I'm inclined to believe that, but we got to wait to see and continue to keep the pressure on for her to not just appoint someone replacement level, but someone who may be an improvement to get us back in the Iran deal, cut off arms, etc. So
I would that's one thing. And there's a whole bunch of initiatives that'd be nice to emphasize. Like, I hate that there's no healthcare thing at play now, but the Iran deal, there needs to be pressure on that because, we just read a thing about proliferation in North Korea and blah, 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 and how can we get the world to stop investing in nuclear bombs? Well, one thing we could do is actually, help denuclearize and actually, pursue that in good faith and not act like it's, anti-Semitic, talk to Iran or something like some Zionist lobbyists like to do and have convinced Biden not to. I mean, that's one of the huge early tells of the Biden administration is no interest in getting back in the Iran deal, which is just appalling.
Another gift to the Israel lobby. All right, guys.
For all good it's done them.
Yeah. That's why I give credit to Obama on that front. Yep. All right, guys. We will see you tonight. Covering the DNC Night 3. Tim Wall speaking tonight, amongst others, including Bill Clinton. All right. See you then.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the light bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive between the 101 and the 5. Do you know how far the detour takes